Just to try and do something.
You say 47?
I have played the version of it. All ratings. I'm happy to say that the 11 we went and I don't use it. I told you, I mentioned Gavin, I could do it, didn't I? And we should set up yesterday. We are moving. But John should be doing this for us, not me.
How do they do it?
Well, apart from the fact that charge the first week, I think trying to reorganize the bus network. Trying to get gaps filled, I mean, that's good. So Marvin wants it packed up with stuff on the down. Now you get some posts first. But we also on that letter saying we can move these things on the ground. So we made a move now.
These on the support.
But that doesn't take too much to bend a few cells.
Yeah, just change it.
Give your man Wrigley, Mike Wrigley, and so we didn't have to remember this. I've got a map here, and I'm one of the old services called amazing map. It's not
What about using
if from Ireland, then you could do I was not contract with bank from using the map because it's all bank or not, I don't mind. Hope tries to bang some money on Friday for but we only wanted for a bit museum. We didn't ask for a million to go for say this and that was but he's not doesn't we want down at the also effects but going up in reserves. But not just one group in the hospital. What we did. We just play not a team game, if you're going to do a team game, you go and get all gaps in the network, 10 routes, whatever. You put that forward to the back of the committee and say, these are the ones, and I think the mayor would be try and massive, but not just one route in the hospital. So if we first do people, you might move Bristol in but it is I think the other thing is Andrew is that ministers concentrate on that. You know the ministers all over anywhere we go, Mark Parkson,
Interesting.
you know, they're looking at everything to do.
You say Joe?
Stop that.
Did you say Joe from the list of ministers?
They're all they work around the gym. If it doesn't improve, it's on the watch. If it doesn't improve, there's problems coming.
I know.
Serious problems. Harper's looking at it.
How will I say?
It's not Andy Berman and Andy Street that blow all the money for the government. That's right, you want to go over Don, so I send you over. The only thing I'm going to say, guys, we'll send you the team. We'll get that team over, and if you'll promise on Friday right there, we might need to tackle as soon as John gets that team over here, I think we might sort it. I think I'll you over. You need to look back at John, that's what you need to do. Marguerite, that point, I'll take you ready for 7,000 on Friday, the board. That's what says the Bristol come over and quickly. Because that's part of our asset. In the looks that get consultants out of it, see how they think.
Is Emma on her way? Is Emma on her way?
It's fallen from.
Yeah.
Okay, then it's all in.
Go on, you've got an issue for you. Started this. Your rubber, I think graffiti. I mean, that is today. Station shows. I said to you, I've got a copy one across to you.
I've lost the Windows thing.
Well, I'll put it in. I'll copy it across. I've sent it around first. I'll copy you in on it. Apparently it all. And now you'll pay for it, not you personally. Yeah. So we better start looking after it. Might have looked at the people train as well as the bus. We need to start looking after it. A bit more. That's what's happening.
Look on the CCTV.
Now, this is a question for tomorrow.
CCTV at the station, I'll find out.
All those
Mr. Redwell, it is 5 o'clock. Order. Thank you everyone for attending today's Growth and Regeneration Scrutiny Commission. I'm Councillor David Wilcox, who represents Lockleys in Bristol. I wonder if we could do introductions of members, starting with Councillor Varney.
Councillor Harley, Bristol West. Councillor Bennett, Eastville.
Councillor Orpington, Bristol East.
Councillor Pearce, North Central.
Councillor Hobbs and outside.
Councillor Edwards, Richardson and Ashley Downs.
Councillor Courtney, Report.
Councillor Graham Morris, Scotland Ward, serving for Mark West.
Thank you. Should we do a round of introductions of officers and cabinet members? Starting with John.
John Stevens, British officer.
Matt Zeppelin, Bristol Service Officer. People with House Council Strategy Manager.
John Alexander, Transport.
Bill Davis, on Highways Team Manager.
Thank you very much.
Good evening everyone, my name is John Smith, I'm a Director of the Parliament Place.
You're going to excuse me, guys. Thank you very much. Do we have any apologies for absence? We do. We've got subs for everybody. So Graham subbing, and who else is subbing? Patrick subbing. Yeah, thank you. And do we have any declarations of interest that anyone wants to
David.
make? Oh, thank you very much.
Agenda item 9, which talks about the road improvements around West Town Lane. They're right outside the Imperial Sports Ground, and I am a trustee of the South Bristol Sports Centre, which is a charity that we run to oversee the Imperial Sports Ground.
Thank you very much. Any others? No, good. Okay, so next we'll move on to the minutes of the previous meeting. Is there any changes that anybody wants to note, please? So I'd like to propose that this is a fair representation of the meeting. Would anybody like to second that? Councillor Varney, thank you very much. I don't think we need to vote on that, do we? No? And the action tracker should be updated on the council website. We need to look at it. It's been published. There were 2 items, one of which was a list of the capital portfolio projects that are considered as part of the Bristol project, and there is a link to an appendix that was presented at the budget about capital projects if people want to peruse that. Yeah. And the second item was a question about whether the feeder road could actually be reused for cycling and walking, and there's an answer given for that. There is a high-level planning document available, so it is being considered. Councillor Robinson?
Thanks, Chair. I've got a question on the first item, item 8,
Yep.
on the action tracker. In the original question, it asks for a list of capital projects, and I don't think that's responded to in the tracker. I think I've asked for this at every Growth and Regen meeting since I became a member. Can we have a list of capital projects and their status? And could that be brought back to each meeting with an update on?
So what do you consider to be missing from the list?
Well, I haven't seen the list. I don't think there is a list, is there?
Yeah, there's a link to the document in the response.
Oh, was it?
Yes.
It's a capital programme that the budget is
Yeah.
Alright, sorry, I didn't see that. I didn't see the link.
It's got just projects. Yeah.
So that lists all the projects that are ongoing.
It doesn't have an ongoing status.
There's no risk associated with these individual items.
Would it be possible to have a status as part of that list?
So I have to take that away and have a look, see what we can do.
Is that way we would know from one meeting to the next whether anything would change? Thanks, John.
Thank you. Any other questions about the action tracker? No? Thank you very much. I have no chair's business today, unless I've been told of any. No, good. So now we can move on to public forum, which is going to be rather long, I suspect. So we have a whole list of questions. Trying to spot who's here. Tom Switherbank isn't here. Yeah, I'm walking through the list. Tressa, you want to go on? You could if you like, Suzanne. Do you mind using a microphone? You make it work, please.
Yeah, we do questions before statements, haven't
I'll do it in the order that's presented in the document, so yes.
we? Okay, so my first question was about improving walking and cycling route from Three Lights Junction over Barthwood Bridge. And it looks like there's nothing specific in the latest, this particular round of funding. So my sort of supplementary, I think about it, is that everyone knows that this is an absolutely one of the most appalling routes in Bristol, and we've been told repeatedly that when money becomes available, something will be done, but it needs to be quite a lot of money. So I can see here that what the officer is saying is we probably need to wait for the money from the Temple Island site in Kent Quarter. Is it possible for the CRSTS programme to put something in about how unfortunate it is that they don't have enough money to tackle the problem, and that they urge something needs to be done by another group, or is that just, could they be another voice for us?
Indeed. Pete, did you want to respond to that, please?
I think we can certainly, as we bring forward the 37A corridor, which is, I think, the project under CRCS, which I think looked initially at trying to solve this. We can certainly recognise as things move forward that this is an area that won't be solved by that project, but recognise that it is something that would definitely need addressing at some point, and recognise that it is a really challenging location and something that really would be beneficial to try and find a way of doing it. But as the response it says, this is something that Temple Island and Temple Quarter is likely to be the right place to sort that out.
Thank you. And you have another question about along the Wells Road from Broadway to Broadway.
Yeah, there's sort of a lot of interest in what improvements would be made along that route through Tottenham. Am I right in thinking from the officer's response that the next time the public hear anything about this is when it gets, whatever it's going to happen, this rubber stamps that can, there's nothing in between?
I think the response is that we have been revising the plans following the consultation. There is going to be a proposal put to Cabinet around how that project moves forward. Exactly, we need to see following that Cabinet as to understand if that is going to proceed in that way. I guess the question is whether or not there will be a subsequent consultation on the final scheme design, as and when a full business case is worked up. That's one I would take away and check with the project teams to see what is on the schedule in terms of proposals.
And Don, would you like to come in?
Thanks. As a general comment, I'm always torn between those who would like further round of consultation and those who complain they don't get on with things.
Okay.
Sometimes in the same people.
Mr. Bridwell, you have a question 8.
Yeah, my response to the same.
The officer response was, Waker is the transport authority for the area responsibility for public transport operations. This question needs to go to
You learn something now.
Well, I'm going to come back because, Waker is the public transport authority, absolutely correct. We need staff to run it, and that's the real problem we've got. If you have the staff and then having enough staff, and that's a serious issue. But the issue I wanted to come back to was about a map or a plan. I've got here in front of me, which you can take, the plan of the city's bus network with all the cuts. It's massive, absolutely massive. There's huge areas of the city without any bus services from April. Now my question is simply that, why did not that plan go out from either the chief executive here or the chief executive from Waker to all councillors? Because that's what should happen, so the councillor could have seen what was actually going on in terms of our plan and a map. When Bristol had it, Don had it, ward by ward, division by division, had a plan to show configuration out what was the transmitting each bus service and where, so the councils could react to their local community. You keep this plan, and you've drawn up for you. Should have come out from the council. It's poor, it's very poor. That's my point. It's transport authority that isn't doing its job, and that it's not gone back to elected members in one of its constituencies. There's 3 constituencies plus North Somerset, and each of those constituencies should have a plan to local members, so they saw the bus services that are being withdrawn. And members could have made representations rather than running on a drip in the Bristol Coast or BBC West.
So do you have a question?
I think my simple question is this. Can we have a governance system in Waker with the unitary authorities that make sure that local members, councillors and stakeholders on a ward-by-ward basis, division by division, are notified of changes to their bus services, their rail services, or their road services? And it's quite a simple thing to ask, and you have members to see council around the authority.
So Don, with your Waker Transport Board hat on, would you like to answer that?
Well, I can't really. It's a question for Waker, isn't it? I'm quite like a copy of that now. You've got one actually. I would be delighted if Waker would find the capacity to engage more energetically with local councils. And myself.
Okay. Certainly, yeah.
I just say that sort of information, as you say, on a combined basis of civic community would be extremely helpful. And it is something that we've asked to be provided. And I'm hopeful that we will get something. But I'm not disagreeing with you at all. To have sites of the cumulative impacts so that councillors and indeed residents could be cited. So it is something we've asked for.
I don't know if you can run me as well.
Chief Executive has taken a great person.
We haven't got it. Yes. But he's right.
He has. Yeah, I'm following up that.
And you have a second question about demand responsive transport.
Yes, and this is a difficult one. Very little of Bristol's celebrated demand responsive bus services. Just Bristol's Church, Stockwood, Cambridgeshire, and then Avon's Village. The concern I have there is the capacity of those vehicles and the ability to get them on the ground on the 1st of April. Again, I go back, we made some very sensible proposals and we've gone into releasing them. And we suggested to Waker that they use 30-seater buses to do some of those demand responsive buses so we can take children to school. Which is a real issue. And so far, John, we've had no response to that, despite the fact that in North Bristol, we will not just get on South Hospital for the children to go to South Gloucestershire College, to the Bristol College, 10, 11 during the hospital. We will not have any links across there to the university, and we will not have any links to Bristol School, to St Brendan's Academy, the Park Centre. If all those headmasters I've been in contact with, some of the councillors here as well have been in contact. There's no movement. 16-seater minibuses will not take our children and our students to school. And we said this to Rector. We said in the meeting with Donald was present, and we said to Rector at that meeting, if you look at the capacity of the vehicles, nothing's happened. All I do know is Rector are now bringing around bus operations trying to find people to run buses, because my understanding is that EZ Medical, contract with an ambulance service, does not have emergency bus licenses from traffic commission. She speaks there, so people them to be brought in other operators. I welcome that Donald, bringing new operators that are known to us in the local area. But I wonder again, if the chief executive John will speak to the lecturer about what their position plan is to serve the schools and colleges. We have a public meeting on the 30th. We welcome yourself, any member, Don can come. Please come to Bristol, we have a public meeting in public, in the press, and stakeholders in Bristol. And I'm sure from Cajun, Whitchurch and Stockholm, I'm sure we'll be there. And when we discuss this issue, it's probably about 16 seats and we're responsible for coming around Bristol. So we've got a few days, there's a serious discussion that happened between WECA and the City and County of Bristol as a member of the combined authority. See whether we can get bigger vehicles for these routes. Otherwise, they can see out from Swan and Sherman. There's going to be some problems.
I agree. So you did get an answer to your question. Do you know what we get?
Yeah.
There have been numerous discussions regarding supported bus services in the region and the loss of services. Services to be retained have now been agreed as have a number of DRT areas that will be served by the West End services. This applies to all supported services, including those that serve schools, colleges and universities. So if you could quickly ask a question supplemental on that.
So let me ask a question, and Tom wants to take you. We made the point to our opening officer, the senior director, that the 16-seater minibuses will not be big enough to take the children to college and school. He replied he would talk to bus companies to get 30-seater, John, which I think is 27 seats in the family, to look at running them on those services. We've also got Castle School in Marlow as well, from North Bristol, they're in the Thornbury without buses. So this needs to be opening. And first car bikes to the rescue, they looked at it, but it's too difficult for them to do, and they're not going to play around with it. They're not going to take on the rescue license. They were asked, but they're not. And there's the answer to your question. They're not. So first of all, not accepted in the country for rescue license. So you need to find some answers. So I would strongly suggest that the transport directors at Bristol, Gloucester, Haynes, talk to Wesher about what is going to happen after these holidays and find a plan. Otherwise, things will get very difficult. And we've already hit that. There's so many times with what's going on in Bristol for all the wrong meetings like that. So just add some action, please. That's what I'm here tonight. I'm trying to represent people who are having real problems with public transport as a number of these councils are as well.
So would an officer like to comment on the Westlink services that will be starting inside the city boundary? Please.
Yeah, I can just comment generally about this. The key thing for Bristol in particular, in relation to where Westlink is operating, is that it was designed to, in some way, mitigate the loss of bus services, in particular around Bristol, but also in South Bristol. Now, as far as the detail is concerned, the contract is explicitly worked, so I appreciate Dave's position here is that he wants the constituent authorities to be making representations to WECA. More than happy to do so, but our control here is limited, as Dave will know, in terms of that contract is explicitly with WECA, and they are responsible for BSIP and BSIP expenditure. And so, yes, we can certainly make representations around particular issues to WECA. I'm sure they're probably aware of them and will try and resolve them, but I think we take that away as an action that I would have to do.
Yeah, checking on myself. Thanks for flagging it, David. Yeah, we will definitely flag it. I know that they're aware of it, but the real question is what's the plan for after this one?
I'm in a position, I'm on Bond Struggle or Bristol Struggle. I'm also the party director of WETA. My name is everywhere. The phone calls don't stop, emails don't stop. It's not a position we want to be in, but you know, that's what I'm getting. Staying on, then we've got that last time for last time. And that was some workbooks and some course with English support. Met in small. This is a really big issue in the city. Open air, those marbles, what's the door. You know, need to make some action, but the form says it's that we need to take some action.
Thank you. So we're going to move on to Suzanne's question, 10 and 11. Have you read the officer responses, Suzanne?
I'm just saying, because I thought I was going to read my statement first, I wasn't going to read that.
Feel free to read your statement.
No, well, I just, at the end of the statement, because my real concern is that somehow or other, the Environment Agency have been saying, for at least the last 4 years I've been looking at this, that Bristol's placing reliance on strategic flood defence infrastructure, which doesn't have any reasonable certainty of delivery. So it's about the beginning of March and objecting to the Goran's application and running. So I guess my supplementary question to the response I got from the officer is I tried to look at the documents in the small amount of time that I had, the position statement. So am I right in thinking, to read this carefully, that the Mayor's housing targets take precedence over the Environment Agency's concern about the risk to life of building on areas of high flood risk?
So as he was speaking, Cabinet Member for Housing was certainly
Good evening. I'm quite heavily involved in this programme because it's a hugely significant one for the city and for the region. So for the last, for many years, since I've been involved with Matt and various other team members, we've been working very hard with the Environment Agency to try and both set out and develop the plans to bring this Bristol enabling flood strategy forward, but also to, as you're flagging there, to build the confidence of the Environment Agency in that game. So the response talks about the planning position statement. All of this came to Cabinet was last October, and that also set out a memorandum of understanding, and we're also just about to sign a collaboration agreement with the Environment Agency specifically on this programme. So we're making progress. There's a significant funding requirement to complete the scheme and to provide the protection that we all need in the centre. It's well over £200 million. We have secured commitments to a little over half of that, but there's still a long way to go. So we're working very hard on it. It is a real priority for us. We've made, I think, significant progress, but a long way to go. So the intention is not to do the housing and not provide the scheme. The intention is very much to provide the scheme and provide protection for the system.
Thank you for that, John. Just any other Cabinet member want to come in on that? No? Let's go with it. Suzanne, you had a question at 11 as well about Western Harbour.
Yeah, that's good. It's obviously a huge interest for the city. So now it looks like a lot more work is being done, and it says it says baseline information will be made available to the public in due course. So it's back to my question again: is that information will be made available to the public before it is in some sort of report that gets further starts at Cabinet? Is there an intervening step? And I know that's been annoyed on the discretion of being consulted too much or whatnot, but yeah, is it?
I think this is probably me again. Yes, I mean, at the moment we've got an item on the agenda, obviously to update on this. We are currently looking for quite a significant funding package. We're in discussions with the authority about that. There are potential other government agencies we're looking at, and we will secure whatever funding sources we can. The intention is to do significant piece of work in terms of the master planning of this scheme, accepting completely it's an extremely sensitive and complicated environment to bring this forward, being alongside the harbour with a really important entrance location for the city and with all the existing uses and heritage aspects. So it is a complicated piece of work. I'm just being very honest with you, we haven't secured that funding yet in order to take that forward. As and when we do, I'm confident we will, but as and when we do, there will be a significant consultation part as part of that development of that work to that next level of detail. So yes, what comes out of that will ultimately be a master plan. I can certainly assure you there will be consultation before the master plan comes back to cabinet.
That's great, thank you very much.
Thank you. So Joe, can't see here. Martin can't attend. Neither is Dan Aykroyd. So, would you like to give your statement now, Suzanne?
I don't think I need to. I'm always reassured that everyone's ready. I'm always told you're all ready in 3 minutes. But it reiterates the point that I've made that, sorry, the environment agencies concerned about building on floodplains really mitigation, problem mitigation plans.
Indeed.
The statement does end with a question mark, Suzanne, I noticed.
Yes, somebody told me that's the best way to enter a statement, and then sometimes you get another bite of the cherry.
So, we'll move on now to any statement of the day that you would like to make.
Thank you. The statement, first of all, the city infrastructure plan with bus priorities, I'm quite concerned about that, because when we were drawing all that up to put in the extra bus lane priority measures on the city regional transport plan, we obviously were relying on frequencies and increased frequencies on some of these services. Now, not all those schemes are now going ahead on the ground. We'll now have bus services in the evening on Sunday. In fact, Regeneration will very much reduce bus service in the evenings and taking the main route and changing them off. So we're going to put bus lanes in, and I welcome that, but we're not necessarily going to have the buses now on them in the days when Kai and Marvin and Kevin Slocum were crawling all over it with the first group. What was it called? I can't remember the name, and it was a joint arrangement with Bristol and first group. Before it can be said, bus deal, the famous bus deal. So it's going to be very different. And I mean, I think people need to be realistic about what buses they might have now on those corridors. Although Wecker is spending £11 million on the summer enhancing the daytime services and the evening peaks, but not in the evenings and not on Sundays. That is the clear message from that was never covered off in the deal. So that I'm concerned. Obviously, I've made the point about getting staff over as soon as possible. I'll keep saying that until we do it, because the bus stops and shelters and infrastructure need to be with Wecker. Throughout there today, you might say the council's own field, and I've got pictures of places to try to do graffiti again, and maintenance is not happening. We need the authority to start to look after the bus shelters and responsibility. And that's not this one, that is the combined transportation authority, as it is in every other combined authority in England. They're not particular road infrastructure, bus stations, train stations, bus shelters, all belong to the combined authorities, and it works very well. So we need to transfer. And we need to have a proper maintenance job going around now before the transfer happens to make sure and don't keep chasing it and we've got stations on the Southern Beach that are damaged again, and yet we're paying the bills for the Southern Beach. I welcome that, but we need to look after it, we're going to pay for it. So back to the buses, which is absolutely crucial to the city region economy, and whether some of the poorest communities in Bristol are using their bus services. These are people that don't have access to Uber, don't have access to middle class transit, don't have access to Bolt. These people will either be walking or without public transport. And that breaks my heart because that's the people I'm talking to. And that's in suburbs, St Paul, some of the poorest areas of the city will have no buses. Parts of North and West, no buses. Ashton Vale, no buses. And the map there shows it. This is South Bristol. Well, I've forgotten the buses, but one of them. But that is the map of the bus, of the network, where it's all gone. It's huge. South Bristol is left without. There's lots of bits in North Bristol without buses. And access to the University of West England, South Mead, Sharphampton, down to Western, to colleges they go to in South Bristol. I've been out talking to lots of people. They've got those services. First reacted after Friday's board meeting, and that's the good news. I went and met fellows yesterday, I put on the record because I love it. And they're going to start to look at the gaps. John can talk to Doug, and we can have a conversation. And now we're going to look at gaps, but it can't be done immediately. They will look at all the gaps, and if they can get some BSIP money, because there is more movement on BSIP money, because Secretary of State can move money around to make that kind of better. And they will try and fill gaps. So they'll try and cover off some of the stuff that also South Bristol hospitals. They're certainly keen to work on networks around South Mead, to fill gaps where the NHS Trust issued a press release with the UC, with the Royal College of Nurses and all their aspects. They went public, but way up, they went public. They went on a big protocol and press release. And then we have the schools and colleges, which are now teachers and Bristol councils are heavily engaged in. These all need to be resolved. Now, I could sit back and blame Bristol, or blame North Somerset, or blame South Gloucestershire, or blame Devon. But that's just reputation damage. All that does is reputation damage to combined authority, to transport authority, with government. It just brings Lee Rowley closer to looking at it all the time, makes Mark Harper just sits crossing over the river, more interested by the day. And he's the Minister for Buses, and he has to live in Italy, and he comes to Bristol and back, and you can see around the city. People don't know him, that's why he comes to Bristol and back without being seen, some must know. This is really good, that's really important. So he knows this here at Wrexham. This is not good reputation, this is damaging Bristol's reputation to allow the public transport network to be dissolved like this, you know, and to go into this sort of level. Now, it's not the mainline routes, first it's going to upgrade those in April, so a little bit better, with the money from the mayor, actually. But it won't be the routes that matter to most people in this room. And there will be a difficulty. And the other difficulty we have, we've got to resolve the issue of the precepting or, in all sorts of money, or the levy. Because, John, we can't go on like this with the levy not being able to run the public transport. We're taking on trains. That's not what money to fund train services for Henbury, Porter's there. But you let them in the levy. So there's some serious work here. You can carry from the heart. There's some serious work here to go on to sort this out. Now, you know, I want to see whether as an authority it works, functions for the people of Bristol and Bath, and that's the Mayor of North Somerset, and South Gloucestershire. As a functioning transport authority, along the Western Gateway, which she's got a lot of future work to do. And it needs to function, and we need to come off the headlines, we come out the government's radar of we're failing, and we need to get back to an even keel, working for the people, by bus services, train services, public transport, walking and cycling, in the way the Mayor of British Manchester does, the way Dr. Stickens does, the way in which Steve Robin does in the days of this place running public transport are over, dead, gone. Those who dream on the road public transport, and the fuel inventions they do, that's gone. It's all done to combined authority, but we need to make it work. And my plea tonight is, please talk to our first group. Please, they're looking, one piece of thing I will say, they're looking at putting a route back, and I'll let you say it, and then Doug will talk to you about it, from Ashlandale back to city centre, through St Paul's and that's not to Cyprus Hospital. I think it might be 25, but those community benefit us back. But it's taken a lot of hard work. I moved very quickly up to meeting rather than that and further to the room to see what we can do. First, we're willing to look at all this. It's a pity we're now got first group looking at the last minute in the stagecoach. I just think we shouldn't be doing this. My answer is it won't come back on. We won't have it for next week, but we might have some of it by May or June to look at gaps. But I just rather have a more proactive relationship with First Group PLC. It's an employee ownership company with the pension funds and the shareholders, just to clarify who owns them, who wants to react to our buses and trains and try and work with the private services, along with station proposal.
And on that
So that's the point, yeah, that's it really. But we need to resolve it. We're in a very difficult situation tonight, and I think that some very strong public meetings, officers will use the react, and I hope they've got a reaction force at work that's good to deal with this, not just leave the public without public transport. So that's not what we folks set to do. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your statement. We have one remaining statement, one person in the room, and that's Councillor Graham Morris, who'd like to make a statement.
Yeah, well, Sue's here representing Brendan Taylor.
Okay. My apologies.
From Bristol City Constituency.
Yeah, specificity, like getting up hills has been sipped in some respects. That can be a problem to anyone who's elderly that gets up hills. But take, for example, in the Brislington area where you've now got cut-offs to Bristol College's Brislington campus, there are 4 bus stops in that area, that are not at all marked on the road or flagged with informing that they're now going to get there. 3 services, I believe, cuts off, which are the 503, 504, 96. Now, why these were not marked up, I do not know, but that's anybody's guess. So this is School Road on the hill sent by the lay-by. There's one supposed there, a driver's middle finger to every passenger on the 96 when first ran it, not the 513, 514s, whoever ran that. Also, this includes disabled people who attend for independent living, City of Bristol College. Other stops that haven't been clearly marked are, for example, despite stopping them by the current operator, CT coaches who will be calling out again on the 636 at the end of this month. You've got, for example, one that's not served by the 636, the Concord stop. That's got to stop legally, but isn't actually got a flag or informings or road markings since the days I went to school, along with 4 further stops around Swainmoor Junction with Stockwood Lane each side, and around Lacey Road, I believe, on top of the golf course. All of these do not have stops either, despite the lack of use on the 636 that are inside the city boundary. And quite a lot of those need marking out. Yes, and going back to vulnerabilities, say, I was on a bus on a big tour out the last week where I visited Scotland and London, and in the north of London, one service used a singular deck service of midi-sized specs, the same as those used on this city's service 8 street light called. And when I got to a stop at school checkout time, a mass had a teacher escort me onto the saloon of service 252, I think it was, by Go Ahead Corporation. And the whole saloon filled up, that 2 had to be left behind, meaning vulnerabilities anywhere, especially where it is a rural location, say, in the Wetherland or anywhere. Look at, say, a vulnerable female up to, that is disabled, so up to a strong and able-bodied male, right? These cannot go on, and should you cut a service with any authority of any nature, it will weaken independence to get around, and it's not right. Otherwise, crimes will be advantaged at them.
Thank you for your statement. Now we can move on to Councillor Graham Morris.
Thank you, David. I'll say my statement's there. I'll just cover off a couple of points, really. Obviously, I can't really ago, and we haven't had the feedback available to us. As I said, on the Trust of Imperial Sports Ground, we have thousands of people a week using that site. These proposals actually suggest we move a bus stop further away, so the nearest bus stop will be further away. And the proposed replacement of the bus stop is not required because it's about 100 yards from another bus stop in West Ham by the Academy. And actually the buses go down there from England anyway. We need obviously engagement, we need to know the details on this. Stockwood Ward is the second largest proportion of people whose lives are impacted on a daily basis by chronic conditions and illnesses. They're also the second largest proportion of people aged 70. If you want to do one thing to improve active travel throughout Stockwood Ward, it's road crossings, safe road crossings. The plans for the number 2 bus network has only started from almost at the bottom of Sturminster Road. So, Councillor John Hubb and myself, we fed back a request for up to a dozen road crossings elsewhere in Stockwood. We've got confirmation it's received, nothing's been mentioned about it. So that's hopefully has not disappeared in the ether, but there's been no contact, proactive contact to look and investigate those ideas. There will be more when I come to agenda item 9, but in summary, if there's one thing you can do to improve active transport in Stockwood Ward, it's give us a plethora of road crossings. As a ward, we have received the least amount of SIL and Section 106 out of any ward in the city over the last 10 to 15 years, and this is an opportunity to rectify some of that underinvestment. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So let's move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the Bristol Local Flood Risk Management Strategy 2023. So Matthew or John wants to speak.
Hello everyone. So yeah, I'm going to talk about the local flood risk management strategy. Thank you. So just first thing to make clear, this is the local flood risk management strategy. We heard a little bit earlier about our major infrastructure proposal working in partnership with the Environment Agency, the Bristol Local Flood Strategy, that seeks to better protect existing homes and businesses at risk of flooding from River Avon over the next 100 years. This is our local flood risk management strategy that looks at various sources of flooding across the city. So the local flood risk management strategy is a statutory duty for us as the lead local flood authority for Bristol to produce and maintain. It was first produced around about in 2014, and we periodically update it. The last formal update was in 2018. We've been working last calendar year to update that again, and we're presenting our formal update to you tonight on 2023. So like I say, it looks at all of the flood risk management work we do across the city, not just the infrastructure projects. And it's got a particular focus on what's defined as local flood risks. So local flood risk in the Flood and Water Management Act is defined as the risk of flooding from surface water, that is rainfall generated flooding, groundwater, and the small vessel or ordinary water courses, ditches. The format of the strategy takes a kind of objectives, measures, and actions type format. So we've got some high-level objectives, some measures sitting underneath that, and then a detailed action plan at the bottom. And it's, takes a smart approach to that, so specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time. And next slide. So the key updates then since 2018. Flood modelling is a technology that moves really, really fast, and we're constantly trying to keep up to date with that, and we've incorporated a lot of new modelling work and data into our strategy, in particular looking at the number of properties at risk across the city. And we've outlined the work that we've done over the past 5 years, and refreshed our look at the priority sort of areas of flood risk management schemes, and taken another look at the funding sources that are out there to support those schemes in the current climate. Updated our cost-benefit analysis of the work that we do. We've incorporated some new reporting systems that we've made available for the public to be able to report instances of flooding. And perhaps most importantly, we've updated that detailed action plan that sits at the bottom of the strategy. Since 2018 and now, the Environment Agency have updated their national flood risk management strategy for England. They've moved from 5 national objectives to 3 strategy ambitions. And we've done a little bit of work to kind of just sense check and make sure that our local objectives still align with that national strategy from England. And I'll come back to explain how some of the work that we've done does indeed just do that. Next slide, please. Just reflecting a little bit on some of the key achievements of the work that's ongoing now. Some of the work that we do that provides the biggest benefit you would probably never ever hear about, really. It's work we do part of our role as the statutory consultancy planning process, and that's in relation to surface water. So for all major planning applications, we'll be consulted on the surface water drainage arrangements. We'll do our very best to ensure that we provide betterment on existing arrangements to reduce, remove flow from sewer network, highway drainage network, ultimately receiving water courses to reduce flood risk. Cumulatively over 13 years now, we have been set up as the lead local flood authority. That makes a huge impact, I think, to flood risk in Bristol. So that's the sort of day-to-day management work that we do. But we also provide input to our strategic planning colleagues on a more kind of local plan sort of level in terms of flood risk and drainage. We recently updated our strategic flood risk assessment to take account of the most up-to-date modelling. We work day-to-day with our development management colleagues to make sure that they're correctly applying our flood risk standard advice on those smaller developments that we're not consulted on. And we've got a really good relationship with West Water, the sewage company in Bristol, and the work we do in combination with them not only reduces flood risk but actually also does a lot of good benefit in terms of reducing combined sewer overflow spills, which is everyone's mind. Looking at one of the big projects there, just very briefly, the Avonmouth Sunnyside Ecology Mitigation and Flood Defence project is on site now, due completion in 2024. That's a major project to construct new wetlands and provide better flood defences that not only better protect existing properties but also support the sustainable development of appropriate land uses in that area. And I've noted there how that kind of aligns with our local objectives. An almost brand new project, it's called the Brazilian Crew. It's one of 25 projects across the Environment Agency's National Coastal Resilience Innovation Programme, and that's all about looking at new innovative ways to improve flood resilience. So our project is looking at sustainable solutions to land and water management to improve resilience, and we've got 6 work streams that we're looking at there. It's a partnership project with South Gloucestershire Council, Wessex Water, and again the Environment Agency, running through to 2027. Just having a little look at some of the next slide. That's a couple of the Environment Agency's national ambitions, so that there's a national ambition for growth of infrastructure that's resilient in tomorrow's climate. One of the huge pieces of work that they're doing on that is the Bristol Local Flood Strategy. So that's one of the key drivers of that is not only to better protect existing homes and businesses, but also to enable and support future development of homes in areas that are at risk, either now or in the future. The planning position statement was drawn up to reflect on how we make sure that new development coming in areas that kind of interfaces with the proposals for our Bristol Flood Strategy is dealt with properly. And we're busy now preparing the outline business case, which will refine the national case for investment in that project. Sticking with the same national ambition, Devon's Degree, another example of this where there's a lot of growth going on in that area. Our teams work to develop detailed designs for a river restoration project that not only kind of improves the amenity biodiversity of that area and the habitat of the river itself, but also does it in such a way that it reduces flood risks and helps to support some of the development going on in that area in a safe, sustainable way. Looking at another of the agency's national ambitions, then, a nation ready to respond and adapt to flooding and coastal change. A lot of work that we do is in partnership with the Civil Protection Unit of the Council. So they obviously have various duties under the Civil Protection Act. including producing various plans to respond to emergencies, including flooding. So we work really closely with them to make sure we get the most up-to-date local data, information, local knowledge, projects, all of that's fed into our emergency response. We've got big ties coming tomorrow morning, so we'll get some economic response to that in the morning. And we also work with the environment agencies, regional resilience teams to think about ways that we can better engage with communities that are at risk of flooding and learn best practice from other cities in the country. Final slide then, this is just a short extract of a very long list of actions we've got in the strategy. You can see how we split it out through not just the national ambitions, but then our local objectives, and then split each of those actions out over short, medium, and long term. So, one short-term action, for example, 1.6 there towards the bottom, looking to deliver some telemetry improvements as part of the resilient proof project that I mentioned in the short term, and long term, ongoing kind of actions such as using asset management software to make sure that we're managing our flood risk assets on a day-to-day basis appropriately. Thank you. That's something I've got to say, but I have any questions.
Thank you, Matthew. So I see Councillor Rippington's finger first, and after Councillor Bailey and then Councillor Ambrose.
And Councillor Bennett. I've got 4 questions. Do you want me to ask them all and then you respond, or do you want me to ask them one at a time, or would you rather I
don't think I can remember 4, so let's go one at a time.
Okay. First question, on page 10, you talk about other minor schemes across the city have reduced the risk to a further 30 properties. The repair of the Brislington Brook retaining wall and construction of a new flood defence there is an example which you show in the document. Those improvements took around 18 months to implement, including building a whole new road down there. And I'm just wondering, do you know how many properties all that 18 months worth of work, do you know how many properties that would have protected? I appreciate you might not have that to hand, but if you have, is that something you could let me know?
Yeah, it's not something I have to hand, but it's something I can definitely take away to have a really happy.
Okay, thanks. So, second question. Pages 48, sorry, it's a very long document, and I read it all, and it took quite a long time, so that's why I've got so many questions. Pages 48, 49, you say areas of regeneration where significant increases in the number of residents are proposed, and then later flooding from surface water often combines, leading to or connecting with flooding from rivers. And then page 58, ensure all new developments are drained sustainably. Our recent objection to the development of Brislington Meadows was based on environmental issues, but not on the risks of flooding. It's a large development at the top of a hill, and there was a lot of concern from residents that concreting over the meadows could lead to significant runoff down to an area of Brislington Brook, which is in a flood risk area. So what I'm wondering is what analysis would have been undertaken from a development of that size, and why we wouldn't consider something like that to be a significant flood risk.
Thank you. Yeah, so that's our role as the statutory consultees the planning process, where we will assess the drainage proposal set out as part of that scheme to ensure that there's no increase in flood risk downstream. So the way we do that is to assess the applications against a set of standards. Unfortunately, those standards are non-statutory. They are unmaskingly called the non-statutory technical standards for drainage. So we assess the application against those standards, and fortunately, the community in terms of managing surface water from flood risk, which is in Bristol, tends to work very well to those standards. I think where we need to improve actually is making sure that we don't just achieve those flood risk benefits or ensuring that at the very least no increase in flood risk downstream, but we're working a bit hard now on how we can achieve multiple other benefits, in particular biodiversity and enhancements. So to answer the question specifically, what we would do is we would assess what we call the greenfield runoff rates for various what we call return periods, so various levels of storms. We would then make sure that the mitigation that's put in does not lead to an increase in flow coming from that site in comparison to it as in its greenfield state. So ultimately, for that particular site, what was ultimately proposed was underground tanks. That's not ideal because we'd rather see water get to the source, but ultimately it does meet those technical standards to ensure that no increases in purchase tax.
Okay, thanks very much. That's interesting. Yeah. The next one is about recording data. I've got a local resident who turned to me for help after his property was repeatedly flooding following significant rainwater event. So this was sort of surface water runoff, basically. After some considerable time, I managed to get the property visited by the drainage engineer. I'm wondering if it's possible to find out whether information relating to flooding of that property has been recorded somewhere for future reference, along with any recommendations for remedial action. Are we able to find out a follow-up? If I want to follow up on that particular person's issues with flooding, is that something that I can find out what recommendations were made and whether anything has been done to sort of prevent that happening again?
It is, yeah. So I mentioned the new online reporting tools for flooding online reporting tool. Actually developed by Dorset and adopted by most of the local authorities across the South West. That's where we log our reported instances of flooding, particularly if it's affected the inside of a home.
So if I put in a council only inquiry about that, you'd be able to sort of come back and yes, and tell me. Okay, great, thanks. And that's one thing. Removal of built infrastructure to encourage more natural management of water courses. I was wondering if you could give us an example of that, because I don't think there was an example in the strategy of where we've done that.
I'm struggling to think of an example off the top of my head, but we've actually done it. But it's things like where there's opportunity within a brownfield development site, for example, we'll be pushing for as much permeable area as possible. So if there's a car park, for example, 100% impermeable area, we'd be looking to incorporate as much green space and landscapes area that would enable sort of infiltration of the water naturally into the ground if it's appropriate, with considerations of contamination and all that. And that will just naturally reduce the amount of water that's going up into our receiving water courses, sewers, without the need for big attenuation tanks and construction, things like that.
Okay. The uncovering of the Malaga River, would that be an example of why that's is that going to make a difference to flooding?
It will, but not in the sense of reducing runoff. So the uncovering of the Malaga River will improve flood risk by incorporating new storage areas. So at the moment, all of the water is confined within an underground pipe. You take it above the surface and you incorporate a kind of like amphitheatre type arrangement, as I showed you in the image. That provides additional storage, so when the capacity of that pipe upstream or downstream of it is exceeded, the water can spill out into that area.
Okay, thank you. I did actually have one more question. Do you mind?
If we could move on, I think.
Basically, just about community flood plan and having a chat with somebody about that. So again, I'd really like to sit down with somebody and talk about how we can develop a community flood plan. Is that something that we can?
We welcome that, so it's something we've always struggled with actually. We have tried before, we do work with the Environment Agency. There's the difficulty we have generally, if you don't have a community that's actually flooded, people don't tend to be interested. But yeah, I'd love to talk further, thank you.
Councillor Bennett.
Thank you, Chairman. So I do have 3 questions, but they're relatively short. The first one is one of the measures in the plan, page 56, is ensuring developments of protection are able to withstand flooding where appropriate. I was just wondering if I could get a sense of the meaning of that in practice, particularly where appropriate
just read out what the wording of it was.
Ensure new developments have further protection and are able to withstand flooding where appropriate.
Right, okay. So this is about things like where there's less vulnerable uses such as basically car parking or ancillary uses and things like that. It might be appropriate, it wouldn't be appropriate if it's a residential use, but it would be appropriate for those less vulnerable uses to incorporate additional resilient resistance measures like flood doors, like barriers. In some key barrier, you might see quite a lot of office buildings with basements, and you'll see under the ground there's like a slot, and that's a rising barrier that comes up, so if flooding is forecast, it can actually cut off that basement to stop flooding getting there.
Thank you, that's really useful. The second question is, one of the actions that are outstanding was develop a risk-based enforcement procedure for autism and food application, which I believe is being forced due to resourcing. Do we have any sort of timescale when that's likely to be backed up?
Timescale for that's probably going to be next year when some changes to legislation come in, when it's usually announced that the Surgical Flood and Water Management Act is to be enacted, and that's the introduction of a SAB, Service Approving Body, that will require us to be set up so that we don't just consult on planning applications, we're actually responsible for approving, adopting, and then ultimately maintaining those features for the lifetime development. Once we're set up with that level of resources, then we'll be able to kind of look into the enforcement and side of things a bit better.
Great, thank you, that's helpful. Final question is about getting contributions from private beneficiaries of flood infrastructure. How do we go about that in practice? And if are there any ever circumstances where a organisation or business is willing to contribute for whatever reason, and that might hinder the delivery of flood infrastructure?
Yeah, so the Resilient Improvement Project actually is a really good example of this, where we've got a specific work stream to explore innovative new ways of securing partnership and contribution, particularly from private beneficiaries. And the beneficiaries might not be beneficiaries in terms of the flood risk, but they might be beneficiaries in terms of being able to contribute to the delivery of our schemes that provide wider benefit, and then claiming a portion of those benefits for themselves, given the fact that they've funded some of those schemes. So that's an example of the type of work we're doing there. Practical example, not private contribution, but Department for Education secured additional £95,000 contribution to that project to introduce retrofitted sustainable drainage systems across 3 different school sites in the Frome catchment. That will obviously benefit the school students and local time.
Thank you. And do we get contributions from WEC on this? I think there's been issues there.
We have secured some contributions from WEC towards the development of our outbound business case for the Bristol Flood Strategy. Contribution close to £500 million. And John and colleagues are working closely with WEC to secure much larger contributions to the capital delivery costs.
Thank you. Thank you.
Councillor Morris, then Councillor Edwards, and then Councillor Castor.
Thank you, Chair. I've only really got one question, and it relates to Bristol Brook. I represent Stockton Ward, so whilst we're not likely to be flooded by the docks or anything like that spilling over, or at least I hope not. Absolutely. I just want to make sure that the work that's going to go on at Dundry doesn't cause negative impact on the sort of the water courses down to Brislington Brook, which runs through Stockton Ward and then goes into Brislington West, into Hengrove, and onwards. So I think recently, in the last year or so, did have a flood warnings down there on particular sort of weather events. And so what work are you doing in particular around Brislington Brook and the impact of, and the sort of research to make sure that we're not going to have any unpleasant surprises there?
The Environment Agency have actually been leading on the Bristol Brook work. It's classified as a main river, which means they have the strategic oversight of that particular water course. They have recently completed a scheme a bit further downstream in the Nightingale Valley, in the far right, which improves access, but also improves access for their operatives to undertake cyclical typical maintenance of the big trash screen down there that catches a lot of the debris that comes down the brick. Off the top of the head, I'm not aware of any studies to improve our understanding of the flow risk posed by the brick. Like I say, the modelling does improve all the time, and a portion of that brick is included in our big model for central Bristol. But further upstream you go, sometimes the more difficult bit is to kind of understand it. So it's one of those things where we are looking to work with communities, understand the knowledge from the ground. So if you can help us out with that, I think that'd be really useful.
Yeah, well, once you send me an email telling me what it is you're looking for, I can try and put you in contact with the best people in that area.
Great.
Thank you. That's me a new question.
Quick exchange.
Yeah, I've got two. But the first one is a point of clarification. So on page 32, I didn't quite understand the modelling. So where there's the map saying present day the number of properties at risk is 1,200, and in the year 21-25 it's 4,500. And then there's a map underneath, and the dates are slightly different to that. Does that prediction of 4,500 houses, is that just in terms of the area covered, or does that take into account the proposed houses that are built? And then obviously, because a lot of the building of houses that you were talking about is going to have those flood mitigation built into them, so does that, see what
I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
The 1,200 rising to 4,500 is existing properties only.
Right, okay. Lovely, thank you. And then my second question is more about surface water and sort of what's going on now and predicting into the future. So on page 43 it talks about traffic highway maintenance. Now I think I brought this up last year that we were looking at sort of two engineers currently sort of clearing gullies for the whole city. And I did see that part of the strategy was sort of use with the community engagement, was like using Fix My Streets and sort of reporting. I'm sure I'm not getting horrible here when I say that system is currently really not working very well. And also that I see that the measure for this is still about property damage and not say people being blocked from moving around the city, which is happening when underpasses are flooding, when roads are blocked with surface water. We've got a road in Osprey in my ward where it's outside of primary school, and that road completely floods and children having to go over the flooded street to get to school, which isn't obviously going to be affecting property damage, but is causing quite significant problems for the community. So, firstly, I wondered if that is actually being incorporated into the way that you're measuring surface flood water, so not just property damage, but is there any sort of measure of how surface water on highways is actually causing problems? And I just wondered if there's anything beyond Fix My Street in community engagement that can be done about addressing surface water, especially when it comes to highways drainage.
That's the first part, and I feel might be able to help out with the second part. The first part, honestly, the surface water cost benefit analysis doesn't incorporate the disruption caused by highways and footways and things like that. The analysis would just be cheeky to do across the city. So no, it doesn't. It does just focus on quite a simplified approach of looking at the damages avoided to homes and other properties. Looking at highway drainage more generally, what we've done there, perhaps Bill might want to come in.
Yeah, so I suppose the current reporting method is Fix My Street, which is the main Fix My Street, but it's been a little bit problematic. Up until last summer, we had a real resource shortage. Thank God, I think you said we've got 2 dedicated members of staff, and they take a little bit better than up and running, kind of familiar with all our systems. We've also had some contractor issues as well, so we've got backlog on Fix My Street. Those numbers come down quite rapidly now, so you say that Fix My Street isn't working. We review numbers weekly, management meetings, and those numbers come seen any action. I'd like to think today that you, if you reported one, you'd be seeing that they are actioned relatively quickly.
Is there any figures on that at all? I mean, is there any data analysis on that?
If you could send an inquiry, it would certainly come back to you, because we did, off the top of my head, no, but we, as I said, we're reviewing these every week, so if you want to see some sort of trend or something, we can certainly give you those figures. You mentioned subways as well.
Yeah, I mean, you know, obviously there's, I understand the whole issue of fix my street now, it's a contractual thing, but, you know, one of the things that's mentioned in the flood plan is when you have a deluge, and there's periods of very, very heavy rain, where that then creates, you know, an admin backlog, a literal backlog when underpasses are flooded and roads are flooded, and I can see how that is going to overwhelm the system if the system's already coping with the backlog anyway. So in terms of the flood strategy, is that going to be built into it? So, you know, obviously there's the block drains on Fix My Street that have been reported, but when there's heavy rain all over the city, that's the kind of casework we get, is people go, well, my street's flooded, my street's flooded, my street's flooded. I'm assuming there's not any additional staff being brought on to deal with those times of surface water flooding, including the underpasses.
Not that I'm aware of this. So the underpass is kind of something that are kind of quite different in a way. But, so we've got 40 subway tunnels throughout the city. They came over to our team about 18 months ago. They were sat within the structures team, because subways see the structures. But I think some of us think we're best to deal with the drainage element of that. So they've come across 18 months ago with, to be fair, all those problems. So what we are doing now is we've got a project starting next month, because we know where all our subways are. We don't actually know where all the drainage elements within those subways are. So we've got that asset collection exercise starting next month. So contraction will go around all 40 subways, identify where all drainage elements are, plot those on a plan. We'll also carry out a CCTV survey on all of those, so that we see where all the pipeworks go going up to the point where it meets Wessex or where it discharges. CCTV would also give us some condition data as well, because we don't know the condition. So once we've got all that, then we're in a position that we know the condition, we know where everything is, and then we start prioritising repair work based on what budget's made available. So, yeah, so once again, it's only just come across to our team fairly recently, but we've done a lot of work already with contractors, so we've had repeated problems, for instance, at Lawrencedale. We've already carried out some work there, so hopefully you're not getting issues coming up at Lawrencedale all the time now, but we need to do something, we need to look at them all, but also what we've done at Lawrencedale, we need to do some further work to stop it reoccurring in the future. So we've done a fix for now, but we need to do some longer term work to stop that repeating into the future.
Thank you. Thank you. So just maybe into that first strategy, if there could be some, you know, looking at how we move around the city, and we've got people here from the disabled community, it's really important for people's mobility around the city, when, you know, for active travel, for walking, for voying, for cycling, if underpasses and roads are completely blocked with surface water. So I think it's such a comprehensive piece of work, especially when it comes to property damage. But I just, you know, if highways and streets could be taken more into consideration, I think it would be really useful.
I'll get my mic on, but yeah, thank you. Yeah, we'll take that away and have a look at it.
Thank you. Councillor McAllister.
Thank you, and just thanks very much for the presentation. It's been very interesting so far. I noticed there were a few references in the papers to the constraints to a system being overwhelmed easily. Are there any thoughts to upgrading this sort of drainage network? So is that more a matter of 4 license 4, everything else doesn't have much impact on?
Generally, massive versus also, but certainly that we'd be engaged with.
Thanks. I should say I've got some questions. Great.
Go for it.
So the report notes, I think on page 15, it was that the potential groundwater flooding in Bristol is rather poorly understood. I was wondering if there's any
secured any funding for that. But the strategy does explain the various funding sources available for work like that. So those are the sorts of funding streams that we're looking for, and I think we put that down as the medium-term action. So between now and 2020, to look at that.
Thank you very much. And finally, slightly following on from Councillor Edwards' point here, funding risk management maintenance procedures, things like community gardens and dredging silt, audits, all those things. Are these particularly at risk? Is delivering these particularly at risk from budgetary pressures?
We have an appropriate budget in place to manage the river network in Bristol, for the rivers that we manage. Phil, any comments on the highway drainage network?
I don't think we're contained by any budgetary issues. I think there's talk about maybe getting some more inspectors to actually, because basically what we do with gullies, we clean gullies once they're within a certain level of the outlet pipe, so that's governed by inspections. The inspections, it's just a fairly new system in the last 5 years or so, but inspections take longer than were initially first thought. So there's talk of I believe get some more inspectors working on that. I don't believe there's any particular budget constraints.
Thank you very much.
Any more questions from the floor? I have a question then. Anything else? I want to ask a question. The flood wall at Avonmouth seems to be a big project that you recently delivered. What's the next large-scale physical project you're looking to
I guess it depends what you call large scale. It could be quite a resilient food project that's got 6 discrete work streams. The largest one of those is a river restoration project as part of the 3 gateway proposals. So looking to do something similar to Stone Street and improve the habitat of the river, but do it in such a way that also reduces flood risk. So that's most likely to be the next large-scale project. Where I have just remembered something else, which is replacement of the end-of-full start sluices, and that's a really important project that we recently secured £1.75 million worth of funding from the Environment Agency to deliver in this financial year. So the Harbour Authority now taking over the delivery of that project, and that will be a really important piece of work to reduce flood risk around the harbour area.
That's going to happen in the next 12 months.
That's the ambition.
And the work on the fruit, whereabouts will that be?
So the work on the river through itself, the restoration, that's at the bottom of the fruit before it disappears underground, just upstream of Capital Circus, so the bottom of the M36.
So in the Riverside Park.
That's right.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Workington, and then Councillor Pearce.
I just got a short follow-up to the question that Marley asked that I was going to ask, which I don't think you answered the second part of, which is, since we moved from this model of fully funding a smaller number of things to having to get partnership funding, if you like, some things, has that had an impact on things that might have been delivered that aren't, because we can't get the funding from partnerships? Is there any of, has it had an impact in that way?
I don't think it has really for the projects that we have delivered. I think it would have been easier because a bunch of funding contributions are never easy to secure. But I think actually probably it's been beneficial to us because, for example, the surge retrofit scheme that we've delivered in Southmead was part funded by Wessex Water. We wouldn't have had the capital funding to do that ourselves from the HIF or SHIF, the acronym funding that did the wider regeneration in that area. So by getting in that additional bunch of funding contributions, it's actually enabled us to do more. So it's kind of been helpful for us really, as opposed to detrimental.
Councillor Pearce.
Thank you. Thank you, David. I promised myself that I wasn't going to make this point, but I find I've weakened. And we've heard a few references to this for the presentation in the papers. Habitat improvement, great, wonderful. Active travel schemes and improvements, I'm sure we can all get behind those as well. But at the end of the day, the people whose homes and businesses are at risk of flooding are considerably more interested in not having to spend 18 months in a cheap and taxi hotel while they're waiting for their homes and businesses to dry out and subsequently be repaired. So I'd just like to make sure that we don't actually lose sight of the fact that this is about flooding, and not about habitat, and not about active travel, nice as those things are. The people whose properties are at risk would rather the money be spent on that rather than other things that other elements of the public purse should be funding. Do I make myself at all clear? Because I'm famous for not doing so. It's just an observation.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't suppose there's a question for me to answer, but
So I'd like to add something to Councillor Pierce's statement there, and sooner rather than later. Particularly considering yesterday's IPCC report about sea level rise, and I'm wondering if there is going to be any review of that report and some incorporation into the Bristol programme.
Can I just come back on the first point, if that's okay, and I'll let Matt just to reassure Councillor Bishop. We talk about this often, Tony, that certainly the Bristol Naval Flood Scheme is first and foremost about protecting the centre of the city and getting flooding costs, because we don't lose sight of that. That's the only 4-yard work. And in fact, the work on the harbour gates, we are really trying to accelerate that work and bring that forward so that we can actually put the protections in place. There's an awful lot of detailed modelling, business case work going on, but actually things we know we've got to do, we'll try and bring them forward and fund them and do them as quickly as we can. So just to reassure you on that. There is a nuance, and I know you love the nuance, in that actually it is probably fair to say, looking at the Bristol Flood project, that we're probably more able to gain funding if we actually incorporate active travel as well and incorporate some of these other things. So there is a virtuous circle that we can do there, so that we can deliver the flooding infrastructure whilst also delivering those other benefits and securing funding from some of those other sources which are more favorable. So that, we do some of that.
I am concerned because we've governed through a period of I am concerned that there is a lack of public money or anything, anywhere. Here is a question, and I won't be surprised if you're not able to give me an answer here or now, but it would be nice to get an answer. Exactly how far short of the required amounts are they? And what's the impact on delivery times of that?
Well,
again, I'm at risk of making no sense at all.
No, that's perfectly clear. I mean, I can, it's a much wider point than this, but I can certainly ask for the Bristol Local Flood Strategy because we're actively engaged in that. So the costs for that are over 200 million, 260 million. That's at 2020 prices. Prices have gone up since then. And we have approximately, this is very much 100 million of funding. So, we're approaching halfway. We've still got a long way to go. Now, clearly, Matt, there's wider issues than that as well. So that's only one. It's a very important one, particularly from flood protection. But we've got a way to go. But we are working hard at that.
And with construction inflation being what it is, we may struggle to ever get there.
We'll get there. We'll get there. It's not easy, but we will get there.
then got translated down into how you actually apply that as practitioners in terms of rainfall, in terms of flow, in terms of increased flow, sea level rise over the years. Then that went to CP, UKCP 18, current projections 2018. Those are the scenarios that we use now to apply our uplifts to rainfall and sea level rise and flow in our rivers. And then no doubt this reporting will come filter down through to later climate change projections, and again, actually practical guidance and support in how we deliver that as practitioners. So yes, we'll put it down.
And what timescale might we see some changes to the policy?
I don't know off the top of my head. I'd have to go away and speak with my agency colleagues.
So I think it's what it is. Okay, Councillor, one last question, and we must move on to STS.
I'll be brief. So just come back on the point you made about the ambition for the Article citizens. Do you know about how confident you'd be that will be realising that ambition within 12 months? I know that there is a rather limited and split pot of funds for these works.
I think, not wanting to speak with other authority, but I think that I won't speak with them. But I think at the moment the pressure is on resource to actually project management at the moment, so they're exploring their options to bring in an external resource to help us out with making sure that we can put our work specifications together, do the tender, get the appropriate contractors on board and get it done.
Thank you.
So, thank you, Matthew, John, and Liz, and Philip, for those information. So I'd now like to move on to the Strategic Transport and City Regional Sustainable Transport Settlements section of the report. I think that's over.
Yes, thank you. So apologies for Madam Crowley today. He's unwell, so I'm going to try and talk you through this update as best I can. So next slide. I think the CRSTS program has been to Scrutiny before, so hopefully everyone knows the scale of what we're proposing here. But it's for Bristol's, in terms of share of CRSTS, it's around just over £200 million worth of funding over the next 5 years, so actually until 2027. And the projects we're looking at are obviously listed here. We've got some, the top 5 as being key bus priority, in particular, corridors or routes, and fundamentally we are looking at our options on these corridors to provide as much bus priority as possible, to try and reduce overall journey times significantly. That can give us a virtuous circle of service provision. It was mentioned earlier the arrangement, the bus deal arrangement, which was discussed a number of years ago by the first group. That arrangement still exists really in a sense, in that CRSTS as a whole across the Western England Combined Authority area is investing in capital schemes to improve bus operation, and the enhanced partnership that the Combined Authority has introduced includes measures whereby, well, as these schemes realise tangible benefits to bus operators in terms of their journey time, there is corresponding investment from bus operators into those corridors. So the idea is a virtuous circle of reduced journey times and then and effectively increasing frequencies on these corridors. So that is the context really for studying the 5 schemes that you see at the top of this list. The East Bristol Liverpool neighbourhood will come on to obviously in a bit more detail. The Old City and point closures are much more specific around trying to encourage active travel generally, trying to reduce through traffic through our local neighbourhoods. And also on this list, we have some other projects, the Arena and the Zero Emission Transport City, which I think are not CRSTS funded, but obviously on this list for an update. Next slide. I think actually this slide we can probably skip fairly quickly. I'm sure everyone knows the A4 Broadway, but that's the scope of the project from effectively from Jake as well as round about to to the Avonmouth roundabout. So, as I mentioned earlier, this is looking at bus priority, but also walking and cycling improvements between Portland Park and Ride and the city centre. We are in effectively in design development at the moment. The intention is to try and submit an OBC, outline business case, to the combined authority in December 2023. So as I said, we've got initial designs being worked up at the moment. One particular part of this scheme is being accelerated to full business case, and that is the bus access to the Park and Ride site, the Park and Ride site. At the moment, buses can only enter that site and exit it from Bristol to and from Bristol. The intention here is to create an opportunity for buses to enter the site from the Avonmouth side and indeed go back out to the Avonmouth side, creating the Park and Ride as a much more viable transport interchange. So other buses are able to come in from the Avonmouth direction. Also, it allows us to serve the arena from the Park and Ride site better. So we've sought to accelerate that with the combined authorities' support. Next slide. So the Bath Road, again, fundamentally about bus priority and walking and cycling improvements. We have been engaged in a fairly lengthy options assessment, and there was a very long list of potential options. This project is actually being led on a regional basis by the combined authority with input from BCC and Baines. As I said, there's a variety of options that have been come up with, and the combined authority considering those in relation to a potential consultation in summer 2023. And the next steps following that consultation would be to work towards submitting an outline business case that will be again to the combined authority in the week 2 of 2023. I think the next slide is an indication of, I think this is existing bus lane provision. So for many of the last 20 years, we've been looking at how we can improve bus journeys along the A4 Bath Road, and much progress has been made, but it is still a significant issue for bus travel, particularly the variance in journey times, and what the scheme is trying to achieve is something that can really set a new standard really for punctuality along that corridor, because punctuality and indeed journey time variance are real blockers to getting more people using buses. So the A4018 and the A37 A4018, these are two distinct projects, but under the same banner in the CRSTS programme. The A4018 is a scheme runs between Charlton Road and Crow Lane. This is actually due to be an active tender in terms of construction tender, with a forecast completion date of the scheme in winter 2024. This is predominantly bus priority and a new cycle facility along that stretch of the A4018. The A37 A4018, also known as the Route 2 project. What we are currently proposing to do is take the central and southern sections straight through a full business case. This is likely to be going to Cabinet in the next couple of months. And proposing to review the options for Park Street in the north section to effectively review and look at further options that we haven't tested and do some further modelling on aspects north of Park Street. That will hopefully enable us to do a full OBC for the corridor by spring 2024. So, in summary, the intention is to take the central and southern sections to an FBC, and the full corridor, including a revised northern section, OBC in the spring 2024. There's a couple of slides, a couple of images from the consultation on the 37A408. So these are proposals in what we would call the central and southern section, so Victoria Street, Bristol Bridge. Obviously keen to lock in some of the benefits from the Bristol Bridge changes. And obviously an example here of West Town Lane, looking at some site facilities and obviously some improvements to access into bus stops. So next slide, city centre. So the key thing in the city centre is optioneering around bus routing through the city centre. We're also looking at remodelling a number of junctions with some new bus lanes that enhance walking and cycling routes. This builds on the city centre framework, which was adopted in 2020, and other sort of developing plans for regeneration in the city centre. So we're looking at working with combined authority and colleagues in Regeneration to understand how the bus network can operate through the city centre in line with our city centre framework vision. This project is looking to secure OBC in May 2024. The next slide summarises this does come from the city centre framework. So the blue route and the red route are tied in with CRSTS schemes that are seeking to operate high quality, high frequency services through the city centre along those routes. So the corridors we're looking at within the city centre project include the Redcliffe roundabout, Bedminster Bridges, Union Street itself. So the idea being that we create a network of bus operation that penetrates the core of the sort of city centre with these high frequency services, and has very much improved interchange on the points around this inner loop, which a lot of services already use. But you know, as I said, the current stage is looking at how buses could operate within the context of this framework, and obviously that's quite complicated and work is ongoing on that. E38 South is effectively two projects. One which is underway, the Bedminster Green Highway Works to Malago Road. So if you've been in that area recently, you'll know that that's ongoing. That again is walking and cycling and bus priority improvements along Malago Road. It's proceeding well on programme at present, so we aim to reopen Malago Road in the summer of 2024 and conclude in 2025. The second part of the A38 South scheme is looking at options to enhance public transport through Pengrove and into Hartcliffe using existing bus priority, but this is in early stages, so it's just something that we're just starting to look at now. The East Bristol Liberal neighbourhood. This is the obviously the map of the project area. This is predominantly looking at how we can reduce the amount of traffic that flows through this through these roads through this neighbourhood. The idea being that vehicle access will be maintained, but that through access will be constrained through various mode of filters. So potentially a bus mode filter and active travel filters through these through this area. It will be our first ever neighbourhood scheme, and the OVC is looking to be completed and signed off in the next month. There will be a continued co-design process because this will be implemented as a trial, and hopefully by the end of this year we'll be implementing the scheme. The idea is that we monitor and evaluate how well the scheme has gone, and then work on a detailed design with an FPC later in 2024 and a permanent scheme thereafter. So it's a slightly different approach, but we're working on a sort of experimental basis in the first instance. The Old City, there's been a temporary traffic regulation order in place in the Old City that we're enforcing with bollards to prevent access. We are planning to upgrade those with more robust barriers, and potentially, when the powers are available, the ANPR to enforce the restrictions there. The permanent TRL, I think, is actually coming into place at the end of this month, so almost there. That will enable us to do some additional enforcement, because there has been some contraventions that we've seen people driving through. There are some civils works that will be in place. This is largely between the Old City and King Street, so Queen Charlotte Street is to include improved facilities, and those works are due to start in September 23. We've also got moved into the CRSTS package now, some what we're calling point closures package. So we built on a bit of learning from the point closures that we implemented through our street space scheme during COVID times. And what we're looking to do is introduce very specific point closures that could become part of wider local living neighbourhood schemes in the future. So we're looking at Princess Victoria Street enhancement. So Princess Victoria Street is obviously a street space design and delivered scheme that could do with some more permanent enhancements. Overton Road and Rosebery Lane, schemes that we've been looking at for a number of times, for a fair amount of time, and this is an opportunity to use CRSTS funding to deliver those. And we've also got Denmark Street and Chandler's Road, both schemes that have come from local businesses in particular, very keen to make more use of the highway. And obviously we're keen to support that when we can. So these are at the start of the business case process. I mean, we have got some of these schemes are more developed than others because they were part of a street space program that we couldn't deliver all of. While we're assessing the level of assurance required for these schemes in discussion with the Combined Authority. Intention is to complete all of these by summer 2025, and possibly sooner if we can. Arena mitigations. So this is a package of interventions around mitigating the impact of the arena. This is largely some walking cycling enhancements. There are some junction upgrades proposed, variable message systems to help us manage the events. There is some public transport infrastructure improvements proposed in the city centre to allow the functioning of a public transport event-to-day service for the arena. And this is all done with working with South Gloss Council, obviously, given the proximity. And also assessing options for an event-day parking scheme for the local area. Zero emission transport city. So this was a government initiative that we engaged with and were awarded £500,000 to work up a programme, feasibility programme for a bid to develop a number of things to improve or to promote zero emissions, and these were including things like enhancing the bus fleet to zero emissions, creating a zero emission zones, particularly around the Old City. Unfortunately, the programme is unfortunately not going to be funded due to changes in government. So we are waiting a bit of clarity on what the remaining funding of that remainder of that £500,000 can be used for. So yeah, this is unfortunately on pause until further funding from the DOT or from government can be brought forward. But yes, there was a big promise of this, and unfortunately that's been curtailed. But we will want to keep using that initial amount of funding to work up whether we think is likely to be worthwhile moving forward. And obviously, I think zero emission buses is certainly something that is likely to find some further funding down the line. So I think that's about it. So thank you, and any questions.
Thank you, Pete. So, Councillor Benny had his finger up first. Thank you, Chair. Councillor Whittington, Councillor Farley, Councillor.
Do you want to take questions in the middle of schemes, or we just going to do a scattergun?
I don't think we can do that.
Sorry, I'll get it off the side.
Councillor Benny.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Pete, for that really useful report. So it's recommended now, but I'll be brief. Parts of shoot off in a way, but also there's a lot I want to ask basically. So I've only got two questions to be pleased here. The first one is about the A4 R30 proposals, and I'm sure Tim's going to ask quite a lot on that shortly. What I want to ask is about the options within the consult button. What input will Bristol City Council have on those options, and what input will the councillors, so the city councillors either side may have into the proposal set out on the station this summer? And then, I'll ask the second question after.
I think it's a very good question. As we understand it, Quaker are currently looking at a variety of options. I think, John, I don't know if there's any, if you're aware of any progress in that regard, but as I understand it, they are looking to take a number of options forward to consultation. I'm not entirely sure now, sitting here, what they might be, but we've looked at countless options in terms of ECC. John, I don't know if there's any more you can say.
The last update I had was that the Mayor of West End was going to talk to Mayor Bristol about the proposals and seek agreement on what was going to be consulted, and then we go from there. I mean, it's a bit of a trailblazer in some ways to have, its original scheme. And one of the reasons we asked one authority to get involved was to try and join it up with Bath elements and the centre elements and take more regional approach, which I think is the right thing to do. But clearly, we want to work very closely with them on what the consultation will be to make sure that Councillor Whittington and colleagues are fully involved in that. So, as far as the latest I heard was that discussion was to happen, and then when there's agreement on what we're actually going to be consulting on, it would be something led by the One Authority, I think, because it is One Authority-led scheme going forwards, but we also want to make sure that local councils are reciting the budget.
Thank you.
I mean, we did look at about 80 different options, I think, so we were very comprehensive at one half of things. But there was always a certain, and this makes the case itself for regional transport being held on a regional basis. There's always something rather odd about looking at great depth at one half of the road, and then over the border then looking at great depth at the other half of the road, and then seeing how those through together. This has been run both from 2000 years of war. It has to be said that none of the options that we had met with the favour of local councils, perhaps to a greater or lesser extent. But the situation, the lie of the land in which you operate never stands still. So we're now in a situation where transport strategy is quite correctly, in my opinion, moving over to backup in the border sense. That's exactly active travel, strategic corridors particularly. Because how can you run public transport? You don't have control of the infrastructure. It runs on. And there are indications from government that before long it will be the right of the combined authority. And this is something else we need to take and actually own those assets. And then we will be, you can see how we become increasingly like that stakeholder in this operation, in order that we will have good regional public transport with. So I would say, whilst that whatever they put forward in the summer is going to horrify somebody and upset somebody else. The next time you're asked, you'll probably be less sustainable on that trajectory, if you get my point of view. So encourage everyone to engage positively, recognise there will be benefits for you locally, and there will be negative things for you locally. But this is a trajectory that you better choose your point in which you want to engage positively.
Thank you, John. Yeah, I remember coordinating the options when I was working for Faircraft and Aids. There's clearly agreement that some needs to be done, but all of the options proposed have catches for it. It's a difficult one. Our second question is moving back to the Bristol Bridge proposals and sort of what's suggested for that, and sort of having navigated that daily as a cyclist and often as a pedestrian and not as a driver, so I don't want to get charged. You know, I see that how it's got a lot better, especially since the closure to motor traffic. But what I'm a bit worried about is the proposals seem to be bringing pedestrians and cyclists into conflict in some of the areas, and I was just wondering how that is being considered. That's my main concern, navigating that particular junction as a pedestrian and a cyclist currently. What's being done to make sure the infrastructure lives up to that latest cycling infrastructure guidance and avoids conflicts where possible.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly a challenge at that location, because there is obviously it's a convergence of people in a particular area. I mean, obviously the drawing on the slide here that's been presented is part of our consultation. I think if you're okay, Councillor Bennett, if I just send you the updated scheme proposal for that design for that location. Obviously,
you'll be interested in that.
I think the scheme, because it's part of an acceleration around Transforming Cities Fund as well, that this scheme is likely to be heading into construction earlier than most. So happy to circulate the drawing for that. But yeah, I think just generally from a transport, or highway authority sign-off proposal, this obviously goes through our road safety audits and our own quality assurance process. So I can reassure you that all those things will be considered. I'll tell you right now exactly what the scheme is.
Thank you. Yeah, that's useful. Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Varney.
Councillor Nicholas.
I'm the chair, let's.
Oh,
thank you very much, Pete. I'm going to ask questions first about the bar for A4 and then the portrait A4. I've got questions on some of the other things, but I'll wait and other people have to go. So firstly, the Bath Road scheme. Just to clarify, I had a meeting with one of the WEC officers involved recently, and basically WEC decided to review all 80 options that had previously been introduced to the council. I think they're hoping to get it down to a short list. It could just be one scheme, it could be three. It's all yet to be decided, but that's going to go to public in the summer after the elections around Bristol. So that's the current situation. When I mentioned the idea of a tidal flow, so a reversible lane, so for example, I have 2 lanes going in the morning and 2 lanes going out in the afternoon, it's kind of been poo-pooed, and transport officers say, oh, we don't like that, or it's complicated, drivers won't understand it. But I've never really had like a data-led response to that, why it wouldn't work on the A4. Basically, the A4 corridor of Bristol is basically 3 lanes, pretty much of its route. So it seems to lend itself pretty well to a kind of tidal flow arrangement, and it works perfectly well in Cardiff where they do have such an arrangement. And I was just wondering why it's sort of being dismissed by transport officers here. I'd just like to have some sort of like a data response, evidenced response to that, really.
Yeah, I can't give you one opposite in this meeting, but and Councillor Rippington has raised a very similar point around a bus, a bus lane specific bi-direction. I think we were, certainly the discussion we had most recently, it feels like it was probably months ago, wasn't it? But we were, these options will have, I mean, it's funny to say when you look at 80, but options will have options within them. And so I don't think we've necessarily ruled anything out. But I think the main issue with the path road are the pinch points, where it's difficult to achieve, potentially dangerous, or potentially delaying. So, if you create, for example, a two-directional bus lane that waits with signals at either end, that whole length, it is creating delay, and not just delay, in its own right, because it will have to be signalised for safety purposes. It just instigates delay on delay. So I think these are all things that can be explored. I'll review actually, and we can get back to you on whether one of those was part of the 80 that we looked at. But yes, happy to return to that one.
Yeah, I think we would like a response on particular kind of IT there. Actually, saying this, Tim, I also thought that it could actually be a bi-directional bus lane, or it could just be 2 lanes going in, 2 lanes going out, different times of day. But I would be interested in getting some more detail on whether that's one of the options and why it was discounted or not.
I was just Councillor Martin, you specified at the end there that this is about what's previously happened, which is why we can get that information. Obviously going forward, so I imagine there was a point you made to provide authority officer that so I see no reason why they can.
Can I just go on to the A4 walkway, if that's okay? So really good to hear about the park and ride improvements with all buses able to access the site. So that's fantastic news. Just wondering, the actual park and ride buses themselves, obviously it's a non-stopping service, and that's really frustrating for people waiting at bus stops, so they see, especially kind of non-peak times in the day, buses whizzing past, not many people on them. Is there an opportunity in future, to reissue those contracts so that those buses could also be stopping services? And actually, that would also apply to the Bristol park and ride as well, where the park and ride is literally next to the forward, and there's a bus stop there. It would be quite sensible just to have stopping bus service rather than separate park and ride buses that often not that well used during the off-peak period.
Yeah, so certainly the schemes in CRCS envisages that as being a desirable outcome at the end of the service period. Interestingly, the recently let contracts for Bristol and Portway Park and Ride, the intention is they'll actually be operated by the Stagecoach moving forward from April. But that service will operate as one service, i.e. it will go from Bristol to Portway. Now, that actually totally, that accelerates the interest, I think, in making it a stopping service. The issue that has always been at play in Brislington, for all the park and rides, with the exception of the Portway, is that as a local authority supported service, it shouldn't compete with commercial operation on the same route. And so that is the issue at play on Brislington. Interestingly, First Group have been operating that service for many years, which would have made that conversation much easier, I suspect, than it is now with Stagecoach taking it forward. But I think it's very much a live issue to be discussed, and it's one that WACA should look at, particularly in light of the new arrangement for that service moving in terms of its new end-to-end journey.
Thank you very much. I just have one final question about the Portway. Obviously, the Portway is ecologically very important. So obviously, any plans to change to the road net in that area need to consider, the wildlife very carefully. Also, it's a rather beautiful, famous part of Bristol. Again, it needs to be aesthetically pleasing as well. Just one little point. There are lots of tree pits along the A4 Portway that have been filled in. getting a tree back in there again. We're talking about dozens and dozens of tree pits that just been tarmacked over. So I'd love to see sort of biodiversity improvements and sort of ecology at the heart of any scheme going forward in that location.
Yeah, it's definitely part of the scheme. But we're looking at what is feasible.
Yeah, I mean, we are looking at that. I have to say that those trees are a major cause of danger on the cycling infrastructure, because I use it a lot along there. And unless someone's there rewarding to sweep between September to November, there is no question that is a major danger for cyclists next to us, a very fast road. So that's something I'm watching very closely with this action. I do think we need to be honest and honest discussion about what we mean by street trees and where we put them and how we balance out those issues.
Yeah, I agree. The cycle path on there is not really fit for purpose. It's really narrow certifications, and the trees don't help that. So I would hope that with any scheme coming forward, there would be a decent segregated cycle path. I think the road is kind of wide enough along the course that it could sort of handle compliance cycle there. Hopefully.
It gets tighter next, but the scheme is looking at the best way to improve cycling down the corridor.
We've got a cabinet paper with the options coming from the student.
Councillor Robinson.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm going to apologise to keep John in advance here because I'm going to have a bit of a rant, as they probably may have guessed, about this project, the A4 corridor. I'm sorry that it's already been raised twice already, but I've been discussing this project with the officers since 2020, and yet no significant progress has been made in those 3 years, really. In 2020, when we were trying to get a cycle path along the old railway line in Brislington, it was opposed by the council on the grounds that there would be spades in the ground by 2023. Now, that cycle path had already been delayed 10 years from the original proposals from our own council. So that's 13 years now that piece of land has gone just wasted. And it would have been a fully funded project, we wouldn't have had to spend any money on it, and we could have been running for 2 years by now. So, I don't want to say I told you so, but I did tell you so. The plans we were shown last year, frankly, I didn't feel they were good enough, and I made that clear at the time. There was a plan to spend a huge amount of money on a small bus bypass along one part of the A4, but it didn't address the other bottlenecks all along there by Arnold's Vale up to the bridge over the river and Toxdown, and it would have put a lot of pressure on Carrington Road and would have closed off Sandy Park to traffic, forcing traffic displacement along roads that we're already trying to calm the traffic on. So I'm really hoping that there are some new ideas coming forward as part of what WECA will consult on in the summer. I'm just wondering can you reassure the committee that the new plans due to be brought forward will be more comprehensive than what we saw last time around, and take a more holistic approach to what is a major piece of infrastructure?
More comprehensive than the 80 options.
No, we only saw 3 dots.
I mean, I think we explored pretty much all the options, all the real possibilities within those 80 sub-options. Those are now handed out to WECA, and WECA will now have to make a decision. At the end of the day, WECA's funding this. So I suggest everyone engages very positively with this to get the best they can, but accepting that we have spent some time doing this reset which I was involved in instigating, because I thought we were taking slightly the wrong approach and stitching together 2 parts. Some time has been lost, I acknowledge that, but we now have a limited amount of time to take this forward. If I was in charge of infrastructure at WECA, I would tell people here's 2 options, choose the one you much prefer, and you won't get everything you want. And actually this is what's going to happen, because we hold the purse strings.
So I guess my question is, we've had a reset, taken time to do it, do we think we've come up with something that's going to achieve what we wanted to? And
Well, we aren't Wecker's coming up with something.
have we not tried out proposals for Wecker?
Well, the opportunity for us to draw something up was lost. The next opportunity is for Wecker.
Yeah, I think I was just going to add that Wecker have taken the work that we have done and are doing due diligence on that work, reviewing and seeing what other options might be there. So I can't tell you exactly, but that it was very robustly done, I think, in the first instance. And I think the question is interesting in the sense that it kind of explains why it's taken so long, isn't it? That there are many options, and all of them have some issues with them.
I would just add to that, I understand the frustration. Yeah, I would too. But it is a very complicated area, isn't it? And very challenging. And all of the options that we talked about, and I didn't go through the ATO.
It was excellently done, but I'm not quite like the officers.
But I went through that, the ones that we did, and there weren't easy options.
There is no easy option, and at the last stage, people weren't prepared to give up anything. This next stage will be the next stage before Wecker takes control of the Cuban network, I believe. And then we will be invited to a meeting where you want other things. And I would support them in that, because we have to get our public transport better, and that we get infrastructure.
Oh, I just think I would add though that the options that were brought forward last time, the improvement in terms of public transport was something like 4 minutes along the route. It wasn't going to achieve the goals that we were looking for. So I'm hoping that maybe next time we see the options that will be more significant.
There were a number of potential improvements, depending on which you think is the option.
Councillor Morris, did you have your hand up?
Oh yes. So, Don, you mentioned about positive engagement. Is that with just Wecker regarding the Bath Road, or with Bristol City Council as well?
Regarding A4, Wecker will be running the consultation and stuff.
But in terms of, obviously my particular interest is West Town Lane, because I feel like that we have engaged positively, but we had nothing back. And we need a dialogue.
Yeah, okay. Well, that obviously is partly to do with the reset and the delay that we have had on that. I think those comments will be taken on board. The options that were so diligently done by our officers and fed into that process, but did not reach a conclusion during our time, will be fed in, and all of that then can be taken on in the summer with Wecker officers. But I don't think that they would be prepared to discuss things forever, and I wouldn't support them in doing that either.
No, that's fine. But one question on the Bath Road: does it include West Town Lane Junction improvements with the Bath Road and Cannington Road Junction?
Yeah, well, yes, it would. It certainly would do. I guess depending on which option it is, there are options that would include Grants Road, West Town Lane, absolutely.
Right, fantastic. Okay, so now turning back to the West Town Lane Sturminster Road, because I have engaged positively, got the message out to the community. 15,000 people saw the Facebook posts on it, and then silence. And then tonight, I look at the plan, nothing's changed. Even though I imagine there's been quite a significant amount of feedback from the consultation. So, what was the point of the consultation if those views haven't been taken into account, or if they have, how can we evidence that that has been considered?
Yeah, just a point on the slide in the presentation. That was explicitly from the consultation itself, so it's not necessarily, although it may be the final scheme that we proposed, but that the fact that it is in there is only because it came from the consultation, not this is what is now being brought forward.
Well, no, that's fine, but that doesn't make it clear.
No, apologies.
In the presentation, no, that's okay. I think as a city we need to discuss floating bus stops because Mayor Rees of Port Council last Tuesday was in discussion with a resident about the Park Road situation, and he was questioning floating bus stops about bringing cyclists, pedestrians and buses into conflict, which has already been raised tonight. Because I tell you now, if you put a floating bus stop in the bottom of West Town, off 2 minutes to the road, that will be conflict there. If that plan, as I see it, goes ahead. Whilst this is the map, can you tell me whether there are plans as part of this business case to include the bus lanes on the Wells Road from West Town Lane going up towards Whitchurch?
Sorry, can you say that again?
So, when the consultation went out, there was almost surreptitiously slipped in the proposals for bus lanes going from the West Town Lane, Wells Road Junction up towards Whitchurch. That was not on any of the consultation pictures, but it was included in the consultation. So will this consultation include those bus lanes as part of the business case?
Apologies, I'm not entirely sure of the detail as much as I would like, but it's certainly something that we can come back to. But yes, I mean certainly it was in the original consultation to have bus lanes south of the airport road junction, certainly inbound on the 837, I think, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so. And obviously, my comments in the statement tonight regarding the fact that Scotland starts at the Coots and not down at the bottom of the road. So I'm very concerned that the work that's been done by Councillor Harper and myself is not reflected, recognised, even recorded anywhere in this document. So can you confirm, please, whether you have sight of that information, whether yourself or a member of the team? And if so, will it be included in the full business case that you're proposing today to Cabinet in May?
Do you mean your consultation response?
No. I actually had the gentleman, the officer in charge of the south section. He printed off the maps for me. I won't name the officer. And myself and Councillor Harker drew where we would like new crossings to be, because Stockwood is crisscrossed with a few very long, quite fast roads, which has no road crossings at all. And to promote active travel, what we want to do is to enable the separate entities to feel that they can come closer together through safe crossings. And we drew maybe 10, 12 crossing points within Stockwood Ward where we would like to see. And we handed that back to the officer. He took it to another officer who has subsequently left. I can give you the names, I can give you the emails. So my question is, and I'll let this minister please, have you got that detail? Will it go into the business case when it goes to Cabinet?
I'm sure if you supplied it, we have it. I can't tell you what is exactly in the likely designs moving forward, but obviously from the wider consultation perspective, we've obviously, and part of the reason for the timescale, the delay in this is going through the number of responses we've had to try and amend the scheme to reflect the responses we've had. So apologies, I can't tell you explicitly now what is in the scheme in Stockwood, but I would certainly expect that we've got your drawings and they've been considered. But I couldn't sit here and tell you exactly what is in the scheme at the moment.
So the issue I have, Pete, is the next time I'll get any information on this is 5 days before Cabinet, and it'll be too late. So how can I ensure that information is going to be considered as part of the application, presentation, decision-making process at Cabinet, please?
Well, I mean, I think this is something I think we need to go back and talk to the project team about to make sure that all the recommendations that have come from all the feedback from the consultation has been taken on, and if not adopted, then obviously reasons as to why. So apologies, I can't be specific as to what has been or will be taken forward or not at this stage. I just can't do that right now. But
so can you get back to me well before the cabinet meeting, so I can hopefully help shape and influence the presentation to get the best value for my residents, please?
We can do that. I mean, I'll obviously need to check with the team what has been incorporated, post consultation. But yes, I can do that.
Right.
I was just to say, Councillor, if you've got a concern that with someone leaving with the information if you want to send me, you've got a piece of iron, we'll follow up.
So did you, sorry?
Shouldn't debate it.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, thank you.
There's a concerns on my left and this, we'll make sure that there's others in the team. Councillor Edwards.
I just wanted to, I was looking at the arena mitigations, and there's no mention of Bristol Road. Now, the Bristol Road is obviously a main corridor from the centre of town to the arena, and I know that there's a lot of concerns about the impact of that. Now, I know there's obviously talk of future mass transit and that being a corridor there, but as it says here, the expected opening date is early 2026. There's not really a mass transit system in place by 2026, so I just wondered what mitigations are being put along the Bristol Road corridor.
Yes, apologies. This is one I've been trying to catch up with earlier today. There are certain walking and cycling routes that are being proposed that are, I would assume, off route. I think we're looking at Charlton Road in particular, that would in theory be seeking to obviously mitigate general traffic that might otherwise have to use the A38. But I'm not aware of any specific sort of civil intervention on the A38 itself. There is a proposal to relocate a bus stop, I assume, to facilitate the arena closer. There are obviously some sort of traffic management things proposed. So we've got so signal junctions, junction works in the vicinity, and the traffic control system, presumably upgraded in the South Gloss area to improve management of traffic flow, but not other than those junction upgrades, not a significant amount in the A38 itself.
Okay, I mean, there's a lot of concern in those residential areas either side of the Bristol Road that this is going to impact. And I did see, obviously, one of the point closure packages is Overton Road. Now, I live right next to Overton Road. Nobody uses Overton Road. It's to me, that's not really something I think that's going to, I mean, perfect that businesses either side are going to benefit, that's great. I think it's closed during COVID. In terms of, if livable neighbourhoods would be saying in the future to happen in that, I just wonder if without doing anything along the Gloucester Road, that's going to sort of hinder the people who live either side of Gloucester Road, because people will be cutting. It doesn't take a lot for the Gloucester Road to get absolutely jam-packed. It happened the other day this week when someone was doing that for roadworks, and it was just gridlocked. So the people who live either side of the Gloucester Road really, really suffer when that happens. So is there any plans going forward to look at that corridor and the residential areas either side of it before the arena opens?
I mean, in terms of major scheme investment, the A38 North is not part of CRCS, which is the source of our major transport funding these days. Our aspirations around livable neighbourhoods, again, this is something that from a funding perspective, would be to further funds, which would be beyond obviously the opening of the arena. It's difficult to say the impact of parking controls around that would be put in place around the arenas to what impact that might have overall. But yeah, I can't think, because obviously the corridor itself is part of our mass transit aspiration. So it's difficult to see any significant intervention on the outside of these mitigation proposals that is currently funded.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, in terms of future funding, please, but say the glimmer of good news is another round of CRSS for the announcement. So further period. Under the current plans, there's no.
There's an embryo on it, which you're working on. You all forget to tell me out, so it's taken. I'm on the plan now, so it's
They're off track. So the second round of CRSTS funding is to £8.8 billion, but not starting until 2027. So we need to get our bids sorted out for that.
The problem with lots of rail, I would say, is not the lack of funding, it's the lack of space. At the end of the day, if you don't accept the reference, which you go underground for at least one node, and if it doesn't matter how did you get around on a draw, it's no space.
So I'm going to ask a final question before we move on to the Western Harbour stuff.
I'll ask a question, sorry. Well, you go first, and I can.
Okay. So at Friday's WECA combined meeting, the climate change paper came to the committee, and it estimated that we had to reduce car use by 40% to achieve our climate change targets. Can you give me a figure about how much this will actually reduce car use, these measures? Because I don't think we're on track for that 40% at all, just by this.
Certainly not 40% from these measures alone. Absolutely not. No. I mean, there's, I don't know the presentation from WECA that you're referring to intimately, but I suspect it was talking about a whole raft of other measures that will be required to make this happen. So, there's some policy considerations alongside infrastructure improvements will be required to achieve where we've got to go. I'm sure, but CRSTS is a contributor, but it certainly won't do it on its own.
Thank you. Councillor Barney.
Sorry, Chair, last question. Thanks, Pete. Just referring to the bus routing back in the city centre, I was interested in the blue line, which goes on the A4 past Temple Meads, and then Bournemouth Street, and then up Anchor Road. Is that blue line then suggesting that all buses that travel on the A4 past Temple Meads will then follow that route, or just some of the buses?
No, not all, just some.
Because I was waiting for the president to get to the bus station, so thank you very much for clarifying.
Thank you very much, Councillor Barney, and thank you very much, Pete, and Councillor Alexander for contributing to the science.
Could I just check? Pete stepped in at short notice.
And we wish,
If Pete's got any sense, at that point you say, go to the board, throw money.
and of course we wish Alexander to get better soon. Okay, so let's move on to Western Harbour if we can, please.
That is me, unfortunately. The officers both had childcare challenges today, so it's going to be me. We talked about this. This is an aerial view of the area. We talked about this as an extremely challenging area, an extremely challenging project in a very complicated and sensitive environment. So that's very much So just in terms of the background and the context, last February the team came and presented the engagement work to this group journey. That led to the creation of the Western Harbour vision. That vision was in turn then endorsed by Council by Cabinet, I think it was in July. And that set out 24 commitments for the future of the area. So the vision document is found on the project website, which is Harbour Hopes. And we've got a summary of that on the following slides. In terms of funding, we've submitted a funding application to WebCam for 5.6 million. That's to fund the master plan that I talked about earlier, the outline business case for an infrastructure delivery plan, which is obviously one of the key components of this. And that will support the renewal and/or replacement of the aging road network. Alongside this, there's a consultation and engagement activity plan, just to reassure the forum earlier, so the community and the city can be involved at that stage. So we submitted that, and we're continuing to discuss with my authority. You know, it is a significant amount of money for this type of work, but that is due really to the complexity of the site and the various different elements, including the infrastructure. So subject to funding and cabinet approval, we'd be looking to procure the master planning team and also set out next steps in the involvement of the community and the city representatives, and we're also going to be reviewing the Western Harbour Advisory Group arrangements. We've already had discussions with the chair about that. In terms of the evidence base, we've commissioned Historic England to review the listings in the area. As I'm sure everyone here knows, there's some extremely interesting valuable heritage assets in that area. The consultation period on the assessment will close on the 26th of March. And they will then, Historic England will then put forward their recommendations to the Department for Digital, Culture, Media and Sport. So we're very pleased that this work is being done ahead of the design work, so that's to ensure that all the heritage issues with the various different assets are fully explored. Additional work will inform the master plan brief. One of the key elements is something we've talked about quite a lot today, though it's not officially on the agenda, is the work around the Bristol and flood strategy, so it's a key element of that as well. And we're also looking at issues such as the impact of the clean air zone, the new traffic modelling work, and as we talked about again a number of times, the importance and the emphasis on community engagement around this. So unbelievably, that was all on that slide. So we can go on to the next slide, please. So that's the summary of the vision, which was endorsed by Cabinet with a description of the place that the placemaking approach. So the four themes that emerge as being the most important from the consultation work that was already happened is set out there. If you could go on to the next slide, please. So each theme has 6 commitments. So these are all important, but we would particularly like to highlight the following. So under be a distinctive gateway, the welcome to all element, highlighting the area's importance of an historic gateway, very much is an historic gateway into the city. Celebrate heritage element, demonstrating the importance of the heritage landscape, and in particular the wanted warehouses. Under support of thriving community, providing quality homes and a commitment to 50% affordable housing, and safeguarding treasured assets, recognising the importance of the Riverside Garden Centre and the park track, and committing to accommodating both within the area. If you go on to the next slide, please. So two more elements just to mention. So under build on its tradition of innovation, so tackle challenges to build on the legacy of innovation exemplified by Brunel, to tackle today's challenges. And under integrated resilience, making sure our flood defences are fit for purpose and fully integrated into the landscape, whilst council appears making sure they are flood protections. And then under embrace freedom and nature, providing value points to create places to enjoy key views of the suspension bridge, another really key element of this, and the importance of the site and financial support, of course. And the final one, escape the bustle, the importance of creating tranquil from different spaces to other parts of the heart. There we are, Jane.
Thank you. So who would like to open the questions? The recently elected member for Hartford wasn't on site.
Thanks for the reminder. The engagement for the first couple of Harvard Moves program showed quite a clear community which were reduced carbon intensity in the area. In light of this, sort of what public transport options there will be to incorporate into the carbon proposals, and potentially what potential there is for reducing the aerial coverage of roads in the area. Given we've got a large number of roads in the area, are there things strategic highway?
Yeah, that's a very good question. The complexity of incorporating a traffic solution within the rest of it is one of the key challenges comes through from this whole thing. Obviously, we have the clean air zone that's coming. The full implications and impact of that are still being assessed, really. So whether that will have a significant impact, whether it'll be a change that we can envisage something quite different, I don't know. But that is part of the work that we'll be looking at. So clearly, as incorporating an appropriate traffic solution is a key part of it, and not easy. But I don't know. That would be something. One of the reasons to get a really top quality architect and an architectural team on the master plan is to try and look at all of the various options and incorporating that in a sensitive way to what's a very sensitive environment. So the wording that I largely read out council was carefully chosen in terms of either replace or do something different. And we are keeping an open mind on that.
Thanks. Just to follow up on that, I suppose there's a lot of reference to trying to build in community space and outdoor space, and I think people will get behind that. Just wondering how, I suppose, feasible it is that that's going to be considered attractive, considering the area is rather air polluted and it's got a lot of noisy traffic. Or by that, I'm sure if with the children's play park, so near the area which is overshadowed by underpass into the air, and make you choke on that day, frankly. So what are your considerations to given to that aspect of community space?
Well, it is a beautiful spot, albeit, I was there the other day going around with people from the Combined Authority actually, and as you say, with a big bridge with traffic thundering over the top of it, isn't it? That's the situation that we're in currently. I mean, obviously the clean air zone, which does apply to that area, which had its supporters and its detractors, but that hopefully will have an impact on the air quality now. So that's one thing I can say, because clearly we are expecting the fleet that uses that to either or both reduce and improve in terms of air quality. But I mean, we are hoping that there will be attractive outdoor space that can be used there, because it really is lends itself to it in terms of the different elements. So it is the intention to build that into it, but yeah, it's a fair point about the air quality. Something we'll have to consider as we develop that.
Thanks. Last question, I promise. We've, mentioned the aims to bring in advantage points of kind of Bristol views. Is that being weighed against the potential for new developers to lock out advantage market sectors in other areas in the city of those same views?
Yes, there undoubtedly would do. I mean, Council, I'd be very keen to arrange for you to meet with the team actually, as one of the councils. I don't suppose you've had engagement with them so far.
Not so far, but I'd be very keen.
Yeah, that'd be excellent.
Thank you.
Councillor Edwards.
Thank you. Just interested in two items coming today together, which was the first strategy plan and this. And to look at the first strategy plan, what seems striking is how much the goalposts are moving. We see this with overseas when it comes to first strategy and protecting homes. And, we're building homes while also trying to protect homes from flooding. And I just wondered what, I'm looking at the the tradition of innovation, and obviously flooding is mentioned. And I just wondered what sort of flexibility is being built within that when it comes to the use of space and homes, and working alongside the flood management plan. Basically what kind of wiggle room, if in a few years' time the flood management plan says this is not a suitable place for there to be homes, and yet it's got to a certain point, what is the contingency strategy for that?
So the Bristol aiding flood strategy, which I think is primarily relevant, certainly to this site, very much does, as you would expect, and the advantages were in the middle of that development. It very much takes a long-term view about what is required. And it does encompass there being two phases to it. So there will be protections built as part of that first phase. Often the joking in the council appears that the intention is very much to have them both incorporated into the landscape sympathetically, but also to utilise them as an opportunity for active travel and other things. But they are flood defences. The second phase of that, which is there's two elements to the first phase, but the second period of that is a 2060 element, and that envisages the possibility of raising the making them higher. So it is quite a long-term view that's being taken as part of that, and I appreciate it is a moving picture, and we have to keep an eye on that. But that piece of work, which is obviously represented, working on the detail of the outline business case currently, is looking at a very long-term approach and the capacity to have this second phase so on into the future if required. Which, the expectation is it will be.
Councillor Varney.
Yeah, John, not really a question, just I want to put something on your radar, maybe Councillor McAllister be interested as well. I've been working with the Punjabi Forum and the Multi-Faith Forum to represent the different communities across Bristol, thousands of people. And currently, they don't have a place in or near the city where they can scatter the ashes of their loved ones. In certain cultures, the ashes must be scattered in moving water. What members of the community have been doing is hiring boats, which is obviously very expensive, and also in terms of elderly relatives, wants to pay respects, not very accessible. So I've been working with Friends and Sens and Property Services, and they believe that they've found a suitable location, which is actually the very point where the lock gates meet the River Avon, the River Basin, the two sections of the river join together. It's just awaiting sort of signing contracts and things like that. But I'm not quite sure what sort of structure, if anything, would be in place, whether it's just like an agreement that would be a suitable place for scattering ashes. But I'm just obviously concerned that with the development of Western Harbour, that would sort of not allow that kind of function to continue to take place. Having sort of spent many years trying to find a location and then got an agreement on the site, then that disappears with the new development. So I just wanted to sort of make sure that you were aware of this. It's been going on for quite some time. Well, actually, in terms of the Punjabi Forum, they've been working on it for about 20 years, and they've had to hire boats or go to other cities across the country to scatter there, or go back to India, which people who are born here, they don't necessarily want to do that. They want to scatter their once in the city.
I wasn't aware of that, Councillor. Thank you. It's good to be silent on it. I mean, from what you say, that is to resonate with the aim of the consultation and the vision is set. So I would hope that can definitely be one. Thanks, society.
So I'd like to ask a question. Western Harbour. Is there a scenario where if the council can't get its act together to build a certain number of homes on this site, that Homes England would step in and try to build more homes?
We are in discussion with Homes England about potential funding. If there's an opportunity for a government or other agency to come forward and provide funding to help inclusive growth and affordable housing, I'll go on the record saying I'm happy to have a conversation with them. So I can't see a scenario. I mean, all of this land is owned by the council, or the key. But the key elements. So I can't see a scenario in which that would be enforced, but we will talk to them about whether they would be prepared to get involved in funding some of the activities as we would be done.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor McAllister has another question.
He does, apologies. This is obviously a huge project with a long time scale attached to it. It's also going to be quite costly, especially what we were just saying about involvement, but also given the integral nature of redeveloping the old tobacco bomb buildings to the project, and that's going to be an incredibly expensive undertaking. How sort of solid are the assurances that we'll be able to retain our focus in affordable housing, and that, or that indeed that the whole project will be financially viable once we start putting spades in the ground?
Well, it's a complicated site. As you identify, the warehouses are complicated buildings for that sort of work. And the current climate in terms of affordability, viability of these sort of schemes is challenging. But this is something we've been working on for some time. It's a long-term plan. I think it's eminently deliverable. I think the challenge, really, is looking at all of the different aspects to get the house there. The transport infrastructure is as challenging as anything. Finding a sympathetic way of enabling that and to come forward together with other elements is probably the key challenge as I see it. But no, I mean, there is interest in bringing us this sympathetic development together. We don't currently have a funding solution to the master plan stage. I'm confident that we will find one, and as it comes forward, I'd be confident that it will then be capable of being delivered. But it's probably fair to say, one step at a time. We'll get the master planning solution together first.
And just to confirm on that master plan issue, it's going to take 2.5 years to create that master plan once you've got funding for it. So we'll be looking at sometime during 2025 to actually review that master plan.
I think it's right. There'll be consultations we get.
So there will be opportunities for the public to
Yes.
input into the master plan.
Yeah, indeed, there will. But yes, I mean, it's complicated and will take some time.
Thank you very much. Any other questions, anybody? No? A cheeky one for Suzanne?
Actually, really good. Community severance is when you build a massive great road between one neighbourhood and another. And if there's a plan to build a 5 or 6 lane highway alongside the Nova Scotia Pub and build houses on the other side of it from the city, that would look like some dreadful 1970s community severance idea. And bothers me because I like the Nova Scotia Pub and stuff.
It's a good pub.
So is that being thought about? How those homes connect to the city and would not benefit from the massive road cutting between them and the rest of the city. Sorry, I know that was cheeky, but it's a big thing that bothers me.
There's like a question mark at the end of your statement. Yeah, I don't have any preconceptions or any current plans in terms of the transport elements that are being worked on. Generally not. So our plan is to appoint a master plan architect and to develop the plans from there. But issues like community severance would be one of the key factors we'll be taking into account.
Actually,
So if there are no more questions, I'd like to move on to note the work plan, which is there. We've actually reached the end of the civic year, and we are planning what we'll be talking about next year. So I would welcome ideas from members of the Scrutiny Committee. Looks like Councillor Councillor Riverton has one.
Well, no, I don't actually. I was going to shoehorn this into this item because I just wanted to talk about the way we have these meetings now, sort of post-COVID. Because I remember in the brief period of time I was a councillor pre-COVID, we used to have them in smaller rooms, and they had a much different feel, and they were, you know, much sort of more collective kind of meetings. And having them in this room, I feel it's quite impersonal, especially with the offices kind of 3 rows back and that. So I'm just wondering, while we're thinking about next year, can we think about how to make these a more personal sort of meetings and less kind of like a very small full page?
I think we were planning to be order or something this time around.
Did use the order, didn't we? We got this out. So yes, I should take on the point.
Thank you.
So yes, I've got some ideas about things to talk about in the next civic year. I'm particularly keen to have the parking strategy discussed. So John could know that'd be good. And Councillor Riverton.
So I'm going to shoot on this as well. Going back to the very first thing we talked about in the meeting, and the list project. So I've now had a look through the link at all of this, but it really is just a series of budget headings. So, you know, some of them are massive, for £3 million or something, on transport, whatever. What I'm really after is a breakdown of what the projects are within transport that that £3 million is going to be spent on, because then we could talk about some of those projects, and at the moment we don't know what they are because all we've got is a little heading. So that would help to generate what we'd like to talk about in a way.
So a capital project overview might be useful.
Well, we did discuss getting in who's the consultant that's helping us to move our projects on.
The strategic plan?
Yeah.
Okay.
We discussed getting them in to some of our meetings a while back, and I think we said we were going to do that, but it's fallen off the agenda. So if we could maybe have them in and scrutinise them.
Excellent. Councillor Pearce.
I'm a big fan of horizon scanning, as many colleagues will know. Inquiry games, identify some of the city's problems and come up with ideas for them. I'm not going to say that because that's secret.
I'm just looking forward.
I'm thinking out loud again, I'm sorry for that. No, identify some of the city's problems and identify ways of carrying forward the new governance structure to 24 such process of policy development might actually be of some use.
I agree. Councillor Norris.
I'd like to see a review of area committees. I think area committee 6 is particularly about funds, and if it was cut differently, there'd be a lot more equitable distribution across the city. I suppose alongside that, also see what we can do to ensure strategic civil can reach all parts of the city, which perhaps doesn't generate a lot of civil because it's taking social housing, affordable housing, which also doesn't generate civil section 106. Thank you.
I agree. All useful. Councillor Edwards.
Yes, I'd like to second that, especially the inequalities and also a budget amendment, which is about sales, so it'd be great to see how it can be distributed in a fair way, especially when it comes to road safety. I think that's a big concern that we are often asked to use SIL for what is, children's road safety. I think that needs to be looked at. And I know that I can see that there is an awesome deep dive into inquiry data that we'll make again. But in terms of looking at the horizon and how that might go into the future, I think we could sort of bring that what's the next step, say South Bristol and beyond, either livable neighbourhoods and elements of livable neighbourhoods, how we can, as councils, take that forward would be really useful to see.
And I feel Councillor Pearson.
I'd just like to contact getting to work as well. So, thank you. Very calm.
Oh, no,
They're all gone there. So,
We've got to go there.
So, on the point of horizon scanning, depending on how tall you are, the horizon might not be very far away. So we should probably crack on.
I think that's an end of. I would like to thank the officers for their particularly
All the buses coming in. Please, right, it's massive.
thank you to John.
I'll drop you that and then we'll do something. It's all the way they set it up. They set it up as a